SaveWithConrad.com.
I'm Andy Cleveland from Appleton, Wisconsin. Longtime listener of the podcast. I listen to Something to Wrestle With, hearing all of the ads and things. We're at a spot where we wanted to refinance, and I know that's something that Conrad talks quite a bit about. We figured we'd give it a shot. I had a series of surgeries that were in a 15-month window, and it put us quite a bit with credit card debt. We had a lot of equity, over the years that built up in the house, so we wanted to take the equity out of the house and to pay off all those high interest credit card debts and get things back down to a manageable level per month. We worked with Larry and then Francis. It was awesome. Talking with Larry, everything was very helpful. Emails were fantastic, telling us what we needed to do. Francis was there to kind of nudge us along if we were dragging our feet a little bit. There's different forms and paperwork and things that you have to fill out. And anytime that we had a question, we would contact Frances by email, and she was just amazing. She helped us out, got those questions answered for us. You deal with other places they call, and you just feel like all they want to do is they just want to get the money, kind of take a piece of you. Working with Larry and Frances, it really felt they were helping us the whole way. They were very clear on what our intentions were and what we wanted, and they helped us meet our goals. So by doing this, much lower interest rate, everything is paid off, and now everything is so much more comfortable month to month. I'm Andy Cleveland from Appleton, Wisconsin, and I saved over $1,000 a month with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, Equal Housing Lender.
SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, there's Conrad's big world famous intro. We've been doing those YouTube specials. You've kind of gotten out of that loop, but all good, my man. We are in here in America. We're in Turkey Week, Thanksgiving Day. Football, college, pro, fantasy. We got all kinds of stuff to up. I'm going to love the topic today. Get a little more Savage Hogan chat, Hall and Nash chat, maybe a little backstage brawls. I don't know, all kinds of stuff. Jerry Jarrett chat. Looking forward to getting into the topic. But what's on your mind today, Connie? How are you, my man? How are you? It's been busy coming off the pay-per-view weekend. We got Dynamite in Chicago. Continental Classic gets cranked up, and I know that puts a smile on your face. We've chatted last year.
Oh, man, I love tournaments. It's always fun whenever Tony Khan breaks one of those out. The Continental Classic is back, and just last night, as you and I are recording, they announced the new brackets, and, of course, you had a big week last week. You did the big on sale, the big party in Texas at Texas Live, just in time for All In. Then we had Full Gear. Man, it's been there's a lot going on in the wrestling world. Our topic today is Turning Point 2004. Any feedback you want to share with us about the AEW Full Gear pay-per-view, Jeff?
You know what? Just as look, time flies. I want to go back almost to last Wednesday. The All In. Conrad, have you been out there to Jerry's Land, AT&T Stadium, and
yes, sir,
Globe Life Field, and just kind of that whole area?
I've been to I've seen wrestling shows at there. I've seen football games there, and I've seen Manny Pacquiao fight there. But I did Texas Live with you a few years ago. We did a whole super podcast special out there, if you recall. Jeff Hardy was our guest.
That wasn't at Texas Live.
Yeah, it was. Time flies, man. Time flies when you're having fun. You had a big rowdy crowd there. Tickets are on sale now, AEWTIX.com. If you haven't already, make plans to join us. We're all going to be there. The wrestling world is going to be in Texas this July for All In Texas. But what's really interesting is, man, all the twists and turns that happened at Full Gear. We saw a real-life car crash to close the pay-per-view, Jeff. Just when I think I've seen it all. And I know some smart ass is going to say, well, Jerry Lawler, and I hear you. But man, oh man, colliding with a truck, that was wild, Jeff.
Yes, and there was some shrapnel around and right in the alley of the Prudential Center, and Yeah, Connie, I'm funny. Texas Live. We won't get into all that, but Conrad, that event was to kick things off. Man, the AEW faithful. That's why I want to give them a shout out. It was a lot of buzz, a lot of energy. We got there's the Outrunners. If you watching on YouTube, Dustin Rhodes, Athena, my man Satnam, Sammy Guevara, the Six Shooters. That's what the Texas Ranger cheerleaders are called. But there was a ton of buzz, a ton of energy. The entire night, we did trivia, Conrad, which you would have loved. We welcomed the fans, had VIP meet and greets. We had merch. It was really just a good buzz all the way around. Lots of fun, lots of energy. Thunder Rosa was there, as we see in the back. No, that's Abaddon. My bad. Abaddon. Thunder was originally going to be there. But no, Connie, it was a really high energy kind of evening, and I think you could honestly say it exceeded all expectations from all parties involved. The fans, many fans said we didn't really know what to expect, but man, what a great time we had. And it's always fun playing trivia. Got a lot of wrong answers, which makes the night really get going, and we gave out swag. So that was a lot of fun. And now, okay, so I'm getting my chronological brain rolled in.
Hang on. Before you talk about Full Gear, can we go back to one of those photos of you hyping everybody up there? Because I wonder, are you the official like Flavor Flav of AEW? It does feel like you were the master of ceremonies in that thing. Would you consider wearing a big clock around your neck, maybe getting a gold grill and a backwards hat and Jeff Jarrett? I mean, start talking like that. Could you do that?
Conrad, if you produce me, I don't want to go out on a limb by myself, but I was the MC of the night. I got kind of shoehorned in there, but so I was on stage probably more than one. No, but it was fun, man. It was a blast. And Conrad, let's get on to Full Gear. And I'm going to just jump right off this morning. Your friend and mine, I've had a text exchange. We were talking business, and then it got into animals, and then him and Karen love these animals. We're talking about the one and only Tony Schiavone. And you're going to like this. He quoted that, I won't get it right, but he had an awful lot of things that he was excited to see. But he said that he put my hair up there.
Number one.
Saturday in the running. And I told Karen that, and she goes, Conrad said the same thing.
I swear I did. I texted her privately because I knew you were on camera, on stage, doing your thing live. And I said, man, I got to tell you, the real highlight of the pre-show is Jeff Jarrett's blowout. Let's take a look at this in all its glory. Tony Schiavone called it the bouffant hair, but a side shot of you, a side profile shot of you when they had you at the desk. Man, oh man. I just don't remember. I mean, I told Tony Schiavone last night when we were recording his podcast that I expected with that big bouffant hair for you to sound like one of those old cartoon chicken characters. I do declare, my boy. I mean, my goodness, you would have made Elvis jealous with that hair.
Yeah, mean, but you know what? I told Karen, I said, there is zero chance in hell that I could ever duplicate that look. And I said, do you want to hear the real story? And Karen rolled her eyes at me. She said, all right, let me hear it. So Saturday, waiting on the Uber. Anyway, I rushed. I was running behind. Imagine that. I was watching my daughter play basketball on my iPad, and showered and ran downstairs. So the last thing I did before I went out the door was actually kind of fix my hair. And Conrad, I went down waiting on the Uber. It arrives, but then I step outside and he stops, I don't know, 30 yards away because he got stuck behind airport shuttle. So I had to stand there, and the wind is blowing like crazy. And I'm just kind of standing there like, I better stand directly here into the wind and stand here right, or my hair is going to be a mess, because it was still kind of wet, but kind of fixing all that. So anyway, I get to the building, catering, sound check, go over the research, all that. I had no idea. And when y'all text, or Karen text, Conrad said something about your hair, something, I don't know. I just chuckled. When I looked in the mirror, I did a double take, and then I started getting pictures that I'd taken earlier in the night with Paul Walterhauser and some talent. And then, I know we're going to get to it. So I'll
look at that. It's glorious. I actually watched the pre-show with my mom and dad. I went to watch the Bama game.
What I have to say about that? She shake her head.
She said, son, does Jeff use the same hair dye that Trump uses? Because they have the same hair. And I was like, Mom,
Don't bring up.
don't ever say that to
Yes.
him. Why would you? No, don't. Nobody, of all the things that you may love or dislike about Donald Trump, saying someone has Trump like hair is not a compliment that any guy seeks for. You know, that's my goodness. But yeah, there's your Trump hair. My goodness. Hey, let's talk about the pre-show. You know, there was a lot of chatter online before the big pre-show that happened at Full Gear, and there were a lot of people who were sort of boo-boo faced about it, I think is the way you would use.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a big advocate. I was a proponent. I understood that this is wrestling 101. And I got to say, I think my man QT Marshall exceeded all expectations. Shout out to Big Boom AJ and Big Justice. And of course, the real star of the show. Oh, we want the Rizzler. Oh, we want the. Are we going to show the fucking Rizzler picture? We want the Rizzler. Look at there. I mean, how do you beat that? That right there. I mean, it's just raining cash right now, by God.
What world? I love it. I absolutely love it. Little inside baseball, Connie. I'm sitting, you know, because 0 hour is done on the VIP party deck. There's where we came to a truce. I know that Mr. Silva, let's see, it's outside of Tony's office. If you can see the picture right over my shoulder, we came to an agreement because I had the guitar ready. And I know Mr. Silva and Conrad, truth be known, I think you might have been pulling for it. I think there was quite kind of a groundswell late Saturday afternoon that just maybe the old trusty equalizer would come into play, but cooler heads prevailed, but there's always tomorrow. But the old Rizzler. But Conrad, I'm on the VIP party deck, and you know it starts an hour and a half before, and we're going back and forth. But because we're sitting there and on the load in, and sometimes still doing sound checks, you get all kind of just random shout outs and hey Jeff and this and that. It was, I'd say 70-80%. There was a lot of AJ and Big Justice and Riz talk, man. The people in the arena, they were hyped for that. I'll just say that. And, you know, it's not everybody's cup of tea. I had a conversation, and I will definitely leave this person nameless because I don't want to say we got sideways, but I just said, hey, man, I completely get this is not for you at all. But I hope over the next 9-10 pay-per-views or whether it's a Dynamite or a Collision integration that we have pop culture, crossover, whatever it may be. And one of them may be an athlete. It may be an actress. It may be an influencer. It may be something that's right up your alley. If the Costco guys and the Rizzler are not yours, that's okay. Don't harp on it and let it ruin your night because that's on you. Enjoy it for whatever you want the entire night. So the Rizzler was over, Connie. He was over. Let's just
there ain't no doubt he was over. I'm a big Rizzler fan. I'm a big Justice fan. I'm a big Boom AJ fan, and I'm a huge QT Marshall fan. It was an incredible pre-show followed by an amazing pay-per-view with so many big-time matches. I saw things I've never seen before, not just the car crash with Darby Allin. Literally, I mean, a lot of people have said, oh, that match was a car crash. Was it an actual car crash? Because I saw one on pay-per-view this past weekend. I also saw maybe one of the most devastating things I've ever seen happen on a set of stairs before. Ooh. I mean, I cringed when that happened. I hope everybody's okay, but you want to talk about something that I know for certain, Jeff Jarrett, if he was being pitched that before bell time, he would have went. Not a chance. My God. Talk about high risk. That was it, wasn't it?
Oh, and you know, it can be so controversial, but I just don't think the human body has a lot of those in them. I mean, yes, Cody, my Cody, when I got home, he referenced it. Karen obviously referenced it. You are a few others. It's all over social media. Those guys, it was, and I said this on the 0 hour. A lot of times everybody's kind of looked at Will's matches as, I don't want to say car crashes, but just the athletic performance, if you will, or the oohs and ahs of it. Much like a young AJ Styles, you would kind of watch his matches and wait for the dynamic athleticism to just jump off the page. Will, in his gut of guts, that was a personal type battle, if you will. Him and Kyle got some deep-seated feelings, positive and negative. So I think they both wanted to take their game to the next level. And when you do that, sometimes you could get out over your skis. I don't think they have many of those in them, and I certainly hope they don't have that mindset. But we're talking about it today. So for those guys, mission accomplished.
It was an incredible show, especially if you're a hardcore AEW fan. Lots of really, really great matches on that show. And of course, there's more to come with the Continental Classic. You know, Jeff, when these brackets came out, I was disappointed that I didn't see your bouffant hairdo there. Who's your favorite going into this? We see Darby Allin, Claudio Castagnoli, Will Ospreay, Ricochet, Brody King, and Juice Robinson making up the Gold League. And then, of course, on the other side of things, we've got Okada, Kyle Fletcher coming off the big win over Will Ospreay, Daniel Garcia, who just won the TNT belt, Mark Briscoe, Shelton Benjamin, and the Beast Mortis. My goodness, this is a cast of characters here. Do you have a favorite? Who do you think's coming out of this thing with their hand raised?
On the goal side, it's going to be hard. Who needs it the most? Who wants it the most?
Ricochet.
Yep. I was going to say, all right, we jumped on that. I think Ricochet on the goal side, the person with the most experience out of all 10 participants, or 12 participants, you got to go with Okada with the most experience. But I think coming out of the blue bracket, I just see Fletcher. Fletcher, 25 years old. I dove into quite a bit of research of him over the weekend. You know, the kid's been going since he's 15. He's traveled all over the world. He's at 25 years of age, I will tip my hat to the guy that it's a different era, but for over the last 10 years, there's no doubt this young man has paid his dues and is paying his dues. This may be his breakout tournament. So I'm going to go Ricochet and Kyle Fletcher in the finals.
I'm looking forward to it. Going to be a lot of fun stuff happening in AEW. You mentioned that as folks are listening to this, tomorrow is the tradition Thanksgiving Eve, Wednesday night, right before Thanksgiving. Tony Khan has made a tradition that it's going to be in Chicago. I'm glad that, obviously they've had some really big shows in London, but it still feels to me like the spiritual home of AEW is Chicago. Would you agree with that?
Oh, it's Illinois, the Khan family home state, no doubt, and that's Central Illinois. But Chicago, you kind of look back on, I'll still call it a relatively short history. The events that have taken place, I'll say the positive and negative news that have come out of Chicago, but there has been a boatload of news come out of Chicago. And when you think about the birthplace, you have to give it to, I almost called it Sears Center. What's it called now, Conrad?
The Now Arena.
Mighty. The Now
Hoffman
Arena.
Estates, Now Arena.
Yeah. So Hoffman Estates is to me the birthplace of it all. First Collision United Center. You just kind of look at everything, the holiday tradition that it's taking place. A lot of content's being created out of there. I love the venue that we're at this Wednesday. It's got a really cool vibe to it. People are on top of it. It's one of my personal favorites. I did some whooping on good old Briscoe and the concession stand brawl in that arena. So, yep, Chicago to me is definitely the home place.
Well, of course, the home place of TNA when it was all first created way back when is at the Von Braun Center. And boy, we've got some big news right now.
Let's do you ever.
Dreams become a reality for ad-free shows Top Guy members this January as Top Guy Rumble heads to the famous Von Braun Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Wrestling fans have witnessed so many memorable moments at the Von Braun Center, from Monday Night Raw, WCW Nitro, AEW Dynamite, and even the historical first big TNA show that launched the company. And this January, top guys will get to make history of their own as they step inside the ropes and learn what it feels like to be a wrestling superstar at Wrestling Fantasy Camp. And leading the class will be former WWE superstar Al Snow. Find out if you're tough enough to run the ropes with a man who helped train many future stars, including the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. And then it's time to put your booking hat on, as you'll get to help book and take part in our own private wrestling show, Top Guy Tussle. That's right, you have a chance to become a manager, ring announcer, timekeeper, referee, or even make a surprise run-in. And then kick back and watch the wrestling show that you helped book unfold. If that wasn't fun enough, on Saturday, February 1st, top guys will come together to watch the 2025 Royal Rumble featuring the game event with Efren for a chance to win some unbelievable prizes. Just last year, top guy David McClay took home $1,000 in cold hard cash. It is a weekend that a wrestling fan dreams about, and it becomes a reality this January for ad-free show's Top Guy members. Become a Top Guy member and be a part of Top Guy Rumble 2025.
Believe it or not, you can still be a part of Top Guy Rumble by becoming an annual Top Guy member now. Make the jump to become an annual Top Guy member today, and you'll get 2 months free with our Black Friday promotion. What are you waiting for? Sign up right now at adfreeshows.com. Jeff, we had such a blast doing this Wrestling Fantasy Camp a couple of years ago. We're bringing it back. And let me just go ahead and give you a spoiler right now. We're going to have the biggest prize we've ever had for the actual Rumble event with Efren, the game event. And we've already got some tricks up our sleeves, some names that you might not be expecting to be there. They're going to be there, and you should too. Go join right now. Become a Top Guy member. And if you become an annual Top Guy member, you can still be included. Normally, you've got to be a member for a whole year to do this sort of thing. But if you go ahead and prepay that year right now, well, guess what? You're in. Do it right now. Adfreeshows.com. You'll be glad you did. It's a whole community. And speaking of community, Michael Stutler is with us here live, and today is his 57th birthday. How about that? Happy birthday, Michael.
Happy birthday, my man. 57. It's a grand year.
I know some friends of mine who are doing pretty well at 57 years of age.
How about that? How about
Got life like they like it. Got great hair on primetime TV. It's a big time deal. Listen,
and I'm glad I know behind the curtain, but the how many anyway, how do I describe that booking of the entire show? What's your wordsmithing of that?
Well, the reality is we're going to let you guys put together a show top to bottom. First of all, it is in the VBC, but we're going to have a group of wrestlers, and you're going to craft a card top to bottom. And some of our Top Guy members will be managers. Others will be ring announcers. Others, I mean, you're going to get to do everything. You want to be a referee? Do you want to do color commentary? Like, we're going to have a full show put together by the fans for the fans. And you're going to get to meet all the talent, and we're going to decide who's wrestling who. And is it a singles match? Is it a tag match? Is there a tournament? Is there a multi-man match? Is there a battle royal? We don't know. You decide. And you're going to be making that decision with some of the greatest minds in wrestling history. When we did this a few years ago, we had David Crockett there. We had Kevin Sullivan there. We had Eric Bischoff there. We had Jeff Jarrett there. You get to be a part of the booking committee. And then just like Dusty Rhodes, hey, go put your gear on. It's time to put on a show. This is going to be fun, Jeff.
Well, it's Conrad. The last time we did it, was that 2 years ago now? Yes. I was part of it? Yeah. Okay. I did it, and I drove back home to Nashville, and I vividly remember I had to get in the car, head home, and I had already a scheduled call with my attorney, and I told him all about it. He's like, fantasy camp, huh? I said, well, and then I explained it. Of course, he knows I do the podcast, and I went into detail, and he's like, now, what is, like, he said, what is that cost for the weekend? And when I told him, I said, no, this is like a part of the membership. He says, Conrad's a hell of a businessman. Why does he not make folks add on and pay? And I said, well, I'm not going to get into all that, but it is a one-in-a-lifetime experience. I will never forget me and Kevin Sullivan standing up in the ring and having our conversation. And I said, Kev, I said, imagine the value that you can really put on this. This ain't behind the curtain. This is actually sitting down, and yeah. Conrad, I can't say enough good things about it. So kudos to all of you folks behind the scenes at Ad Free. It is truly a once in a lifetime experience. It really
What's
is.
cool about this too, Jeff, is you're right. There are rock and roll fantasy camps and baseball fantasy camps, and they charge thousands of dollars. That's not what we're doing here. This
Oh,
is just included as part of your membership if you're a top guy. Make plans to join us. Join right now, adfreeshows.com, become an annual member, and we'll see you in Huntsville. And here's what's really cool. You know, usually when we do these top guy get-togethers or these ad-free shows get together, we go to AEW, wherever they may be, in Chicago or what have you. This year, we pulled a few strings, and AEW is coming to us. So you'll be able to attend a Dynamite and a Collision taping on Wednesday night. On Thursday, here's a little spoiler, we're putting together some fun activities, and the real event kicks off on Friday and Saturday. It's the best value in wrestling. It is a great community. I encourage you, go check it out for yourself, adfreeshows.com.
By far the best by far. Did I say by far? All right, Connie.
Hey, our topic today is Turning Point 2004. But before we do that, we got to ask Jeff the really hard-hitting questions. And we just want to go to a one-shot right now with Jeff because this is a serious question. Jeff, do your balls stink?
Here we go. Are we getting on your Reddit thread again?
No, we're not getting on a Reddit thread. We're not talking about the DVD-R sleaze thread. I'm talking about you, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Are your balls a little stinky?
Here we go. The greatest read of all time. The testimonial. Do you want to get, you know what? Let me get the queen up here and let her answer.
I want you to stick your hand down your pants and stick them to your nostrils and do a little sniff test and just tell me, do they stink or are you confident because of our product here today?
I'm confident. I am overconfident.
Thanks to Mando, Jeff doesn't have to wash his crack of his ass for 72 hours. Now, even folks in Tennessee know better than that. But if you're in a pinch and you want something strong enough to last 72 hours, Mando whole body odor control is what you're looking for. We're talking whole body deodorant. Jeff rubs it on his armpits. He rubs it on his balls. He rubs it on his thigh folds, his belly buttons, his butt cracks, and his feet. It was all created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal body odor was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Now it's clinically proven to block odor all day and control it for up to 72 hours. You've got the solid deodorant stick. It's been formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it even starts. And the spray deodorant is a favorite of the Silva household. He's got those little T-Rex arms. He can't reach everywhere, but it's aluminum free and it's ideal for those hard to reach places. Silva tells me it's perfect for the crack of his ass and his tank specifically. It's baking soda free. It's paraben free. And there's a variety of fresh scents. You got bourbon leather. You got clover woods. You got Pro Sport. You got Mount Fuji. This is no rib, 72-hour odor control, and Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with that solid stick deodorant. You get the cream tube deodorant and 2 free products of your choice. I recommend the mini body wash and the deodorant wipes. You can even get free shipping. And as a special offer for our listeners, new customers can get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That's like 40% off your starter pack when you use the code MyWorld at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
Did you say T-Rex arms?
Well, I mean, is there a better way to describe Dave Silva than he's got them little T-Rex arms?
Do you think we could get like a cartoon on how he puts Mando on is with the T-Rex arms?
I could probably get a live action reenactment if you wait long enough. I mean, everybody on the show uses Mandos. Like our stacks are smelling better than ever. Can you say the same? You got a stinky ass paint? What's wrong with you? Go check out Mando. You'll be glad you did. Use our promo code MyWorld and your world will get a little easier. What we're talking about, let me just say it plainly here. We want you to smell better naked. I don't know what makes them want to do the things they want to do, but I know what makes them not want to. Roll Tide. This is something the whole family will be thankful for. Go right now, shopmando.com, use the promo code MyWorld, and boy, the benefits are just going to come rolling in. Shopmando.com. Hey, speaking of Roll Tide, I don't know if you saw the new slogan, Jeff, but Silva's got it for us, and I can't wait to share it with you. It used to be Lank. Let every naysayer know. Let all naysayers know. Well, now it's Lankin. Lost at Nashville, Knoxville, and Norman. Roll Tide. Here we go, mediocrity. We're back where we belong. It's the Shula days. Milrow got absolutely dominated. I understand that Tennessee was actually able to pick up a win over that powerhouse known as UTEP. But man, can you believe that Alabama has 3 regular season losses, but still they're 13? Like, if one team loses, they might still sneak in the playoffs. What the hell's happening with college football, Jeff?
I am so proud of you, Conrad. That's calling getting in front of it. A PR firm strategically will always say when there's a crisis, hey, guys, we got to get in front of it. I'll be damn, Connie. You got way in front of it with the logo. I mean, you're literally wrapped up a loss to Vanderbilt into a logo. You're creating your narrative. You're ending with that. Hey, we're still 13th. Bravo. You guys took an ass whooping. Can I?
Milroe got shut down like he's never been shut down before. And what's crazy is 6 weeks ago, a lot of people were saying he was going to be the number 1 draft pick. And then even last week, they were saying, okay, he's going to be 18. You got to think he's fallen completely out of the first round. The real question to me is now, does Milroe come back for his 5th year? Does he jump in the transfer portal and get a bunch of cash? Does Ryan Williams follow him? It's going to be interesting to see what happens because all of a sudden there's a whole lot of stakes in the Iron Bowl this weekend. Alabama, Auburn can have an opportunity to just eliminate all of Alabama's championship hopes. I mean, to knock them completely out of playoff contention, that would make Auburn's season. This could be really fun this weekend.
Now, Connie, I would put you're a dear friend.
Thank you.
Your ability to communicate is second to none. You're one of my best friends, but I don't have a friend that not only can, it's no like and trust. That's one thing, but just truly communicate. But Silva, if you could on cue, I want to go to a one shot because I won't do your best. I want you to channel your inner Larry Thompson when Milroe threw that last pick.
We'll get kicked off YouTube. Can't do it. I value our business relationship. There was a combination of bad words I'd never heard before. And if I unleash that here on YouTube, I mean, and he's old South, say with that what you want. But I'm just saying, I learned a combination of words. It's like Christmas Story is going to be shown a lot on TBS this weekend, I'm sure. And when he's helping his dad with the tire on the side of the road, oh, fudge. Boy, there was a lot of fudge going around at the Thompson household. It was amazing. I mean, my dad still takes it real personal. My dad is the kid at the Terry Funk Q&A. It's still real to me, Dad. That's my dad for Alabama football. And I'm like, Dad, we've won more championships than everybody ever. Is it okay if we lose every now and again? It's not the end of the world. It's been a fun season. Kinda. Who cares?
Connie, let me ask you another question. Do you think Coach DeBoer will get a Christmas card from Mr. Larry this year?
I think my dad would offer to pack his ass up and move him on. My dad would pledge his entire net worth for Nick Saban to come back, but that's not going to happen. But what I really had fun with, and you'll like this, Chip,
I am cracking up.
Stirred up my dad on Sunday because I said, Auburn has the chance to do something. What's that?
Shame on you. You just admit
I can't help it.
You can't
help it. Yeah. Because what if Milroe takes a big check from Auburn? Auburn's got a pretty good team, but no quarterback. So if Milroe were to jump to Auburn, get a big check, and get his 17-year-old buddy Ryan Williams to follow him, now the 2 most dynamic Alabama players are playing for the ops, as the kids are saying. Man, it would just be amazing to see. I would love that story. I, for one, have been playing with house money as a football fan since 2009. I was so blessed to see it happen in 92. And when it happened in 09, I'm like, well, shit, I got 2 in my lifetime. There's no beating that. Who would have predicted that Saban would go on a run? So when I saw that Lankin thing I showed you earlier, it was from an Auburn account. I retweeted it. It's hilarious. Like, Alabama has become the Yankees of college football. So when they lose, everybody rejoices. Why not have fun with that?
Times 10.
Mm-hmm.
Times 10 because they're at the top. Everybody hates the SEC, Roll Tide, but to put them and wow, you made my day just because when Alabama earlier in the year, the Ryan Williams touchdown against Georgia,
yes,
to go ahead, I would have given anything to see a camera on Larry for his response because it was over. It was like, oh boy, Georgia knocked it to him again. And when I would have loved to have seen Larry just, that's my team.
Ryan Williams had 2 touchdowns called back in that game. I know you didn't get a chance to watch it. You were doing AEW business. But
Saturday he did?
Yeah. There was one, Jeff, where they called pass interference where no one was touched at all and called back a Ryan Williams touchdown. Ooh. The announcers were like, there is no excuse for this. We can't make rhyme or reason to this. And it just deflated everything. And then, of course, Milroe managed to throw a 3rd interception. He channeled his inner Joe Burrow and just became the loser at his core. Lord. And I hope that he can shake it off. He's only 21, so I'm always hesitant to be piling on kids who just are able now to legally drink a beer. And now all of our hopes and dreams are on them. Like, it's a little silly. Guys, they're kids playing a game. And besides, Alabama's a basketball school. Everybody knows that. They're ranked number 8. Sorry-ass Tennessee is 11, I think. I don't know. I just know they're not in the top 10.
Here we go.
We'll see what happens. Yeah, everybody knows Alabama's a basketball school.
Here we go. Y'all do have a good team. You got a good coach. Anyhow, do we need to do an episode without just beating the shit out of Abyss? Should we give him a pass or?
I think so, because I think, I want to be a little more charitable.
Okay.
To Abyss. And I'm even thinking about, just in time for Christmas, getting my man a Lumen. It's the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs. Then it gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, and your sleep, even your stress management. All you got to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know exactly what's going on with your metabolism, meaning whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. And then Lumen will give you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into your Lumen before and after your workouts and even your meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. Think of your metabolism almost as like your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a whole bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health with each breath. So if you want to stay on track with your health this holiday season, go right now to lumen.me/myworld to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/myworld for 15% off your purchase. Lumen makes a great gift too. And we thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring today's podcast.
Cheat code for health. Cheat code for health. It's the real deal, folks.
It is the real deal. And so was Turning Point 2004. Does it feel like it's been 20 years, man?
Can I do a little teaser?
Sure.
We'll talk about next week, okay? But I want to get this out of my before break. Have you ever, look, we're both old timers, if you will, but come a October, November, Q4, October, November, December, do you remember a year when there has been this much anticipation for the new year to start?
No.
Okay. Japan news, just crazy kind of Japan news. There's Mexico news. There's obviously AEW and Australia and all that, and Netflix, which I think is, Max, just the streamer. Anyway, let's talk about that next week on, maybe we'll do predictions, something like that. I know we got to get to the topic, but I love kind of caboosing with you. But 2025 is going to be pretty interesting. I'll say that. America's
changing too, with the new administration coming in. It's going to be really interesting to see how the financial markets are responding to that. They saw Bitcoin hit 100,000 last week. There's lots of crazy stuff going on. A lot of people are looking forward to 2025 being here. I know we don't spend a ton of time talking about WWE, but as we're recording this morning, it's been announced that the main event for Saturday night's main event on NBC is Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens. A lot of people thought they might see that at the Survivor Series this weekend. It's now going to be the headline event for the first live Saturday night's main event in a long time. It's going to be on Peacock and on NBC. 2025 is going to be big for the wrestling business.
When is the first Saturday night main event?
December 14th.
That's what I thought, before 2025. Yeah, that's their first one. Wow. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's the Max conversation internally, AEW, not just internally, just we are fully entered into, you think about the territory days, and that's the local network TV or U channel, even the off channel, then cable television, then the golden age. Then we just kind of barely got into the streaming world and the WWE network. Connie, January, Max and Netflix will have live wrestling full time. Isn't that crazy?
I was telling my wife that, she's obviously not a wrestling fan. And we love HBO Max. And I know people send me tweets. It's not called HBO Max anymore. I know, motherfucker. It ain't called Twitter either. All right. I'm just gonna call it what I call it. It's stupid for you to send me that. But I said to her, how wild is it going to be? We're going to log in this in a couple of weeks and it's going to have AEW listed. Like that to me is just startling, kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm excited to see what streaming and wrestling has in store. And there's, by the way, a lot of really fun stuff happening. I mean, I know we don't talk about MLW a lot here on the show, but Eric Bischoff is doing a thing right here at the end of the year. It's going to be a lot of fun, man.
Next week, we don't have time for it today, but before we get into the topic next week, what to do is we ought to just kind of chat about not the state of wrestling, but just what's on the horizon. Like I said, the Japan story, the MLW story, AEW story, the Netflix story. It's good old wrestling business, Connie, good old wrestling business. And when the Rizzler gets the kind of pop that he gets, says it all. It's the state of the industry.
Oh, we want the Rizzler. I mean, listen, here's my plea. I know there's a lot of people who hated the idea that it wasn't just wall-to-wall wrestling and wall-to-wall matches. I understand. But I think the highest and best use, and I hope that Tony Khan is listening, you got to sign those boys up to help with social media. Like that's what they do better than anything else is they court attention. And I'm not saying replace Jeff Jones or any of the people who work behind the scenes. I'm saying, can you imagine a scenario where there's just moments or matches or situations or buildings or angles or characters, and those guys are giving them the boom or the doom and having a little fun? Their 60-second pre-tape last week on Dynamite got over 11 million impressions on Twitter alone, not counting all the other platforms. To just turn a blind eye to that level of publicity is a little crazy. I hope that we see more of them. And I know that there's a whole bunch of AEW diehards who think, I don't want them to be wrestling matches. They don't have to wrestle matches to be affiliated with the AEW program and be a contributor and bring a whole lot of value. I'm standing on business when I say to you in a loud and clear voice, Big Boom AJ is the best ROI in the history of AEW besides Jeff Jarrett. I really do believe that.
Connie, a building worker at the Prudential Center I saw him last time. I've seen him because 2 years ago is where we debuted there. I've seen the gentleman there a couple of times and in the tri-state area. He came up and he rolled his eyes because he's thinking he's going to lean into, Jeff is probably not a fan of all this stuff. I don't know what he was thinking because I'm thinking Beetlejuice and Chuck Norris and fill in the blank a bunch of them. But anyway, as he's kind of talking about, he called it nonsense, which I chuckled at. And he says, back in the territory days, y'all didn't have, and I said, whoa, let me just tell you one word, one name and see what you think. He just looked at me and said, Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, of course.
He goes, oh, I said, are you kidding me, dude?
Hey, let me just ask you, Jeff, what's the biggest event in wrestling each year? With all due respect to AEW, New Japan, and TNA, what's the single biggest seminal event in wrestling each year?
Mania.
And who was on the poster for the very first one? Can you remind us?
On the very first one?
The very first WrestleMania, before we started numbering them, when it was just plain old WrestleMania.
It's got to be Sidney Lauper and
it was Hulk Hogan and Mr. T.
Mr. T. Yeah, I could. Yeah,
it was Hulk Hogan and Mr. T.
They were the only two on there.
They're the only two on the WrestleMania poster: Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. Not another wrestler. No Roddy Piper. Nobody else.
Well, when you think about it, you had the yin and yang because Hogan had all those 5-star matches. Oh no, he didn't. That's Well, point taken.
And by the way, how were they so emboldened to think that something like that would work? And it was because they had a crossover opportunity with MTV because of what you just said, Cyndi Lauper. If it weren't for the integration of mainstream celebrities and pop culture, wrestling would not be where it is today. So that's just it. That's the whole sentence. I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, and I get it. Go jack off to some New Japan. But here in America, we got to have a little pop culture. We got to have some mainstream celebrity. And when it's done right, it works every time. And it did with AJ. And if you don't like it, take a poop with your pants on because it's good for business. It's best for business. Roll Tide.
2004 Turning Point. Here we go.
We got 12 minutes to talk about it. Jeff, what do you like? What do you like? What do you remember about 20 years ago? I'll hang up and listen.
No, I don't even know where to dive off into it, but we were coming off some momentum. I'll just say that. If I remember correctly, right? This is the month after Victory Road.
Victory Road had exceeded expectations, and the rumor and innuendo was backstage. People were very optimistic about the number of buys that came in. The Observer was saying that it was more than 30,000, which is going to be a high watermark for the company. And of course, if you were keeping score, the target was 25,000. There's speculation that they may have even doubled it. Now, this is a different time, so you didn't get those pay-per-view buy rights or buy rate information in real time. Because when it's digital now and you can click a button or you're able to order it on pay-per-view on a streaming platform, that sort of thing, you can get that information pretty quickly. But you got to remember 20 years ago, a lot of this was still coming through the cable systems. So you might not know for several weeks and sometimes even over a month later what the real number was. And oftentimes the pay for those would trail 60, 90, sometimes even 180 days. It would just continue to trickle in because if somebody didn't pay their cable bill or they had to issue a refund, they had to be given a little bit of leeway to process all of that. But coming out of that show, as you're getting ready for your next pay-per-view, which is our topic today, Turning Point 04, there's a lot of optimism in TNA based on that first 3-hour show, right, Jeff?
Yes, and as I looked at the research and read it, and look, again, there's a lot of blessings to do in my world, and me and you chatting and having a bunch of nonsense. But I think it's also, in business, they call them postmortems. I'm doing a postmortem on so many things about, yes, my career, but also the business as well. Because when I look back on all of it, we've had that, man, Jeff, your ratings, you were doing 1.4, 1.5. You broke 2 million for 3/4 hours. The whole show did 1.8 million or above. And so the amount of people watching our show and the demos are good. And man, Jeff, you just guys didn't convert on pay-per-view. And they're right. What was our master? Was it to go for ratings and sacrifice pay-per-views? Because you knew just all the conversations, especially if you're a regular listener, you will kind of know all the deep dive on that. But you just touched on, as I read the research this morning and looking at, oh man, the optimism, it goes back to the norm on the cable systems to get kind of a ballpark number in reality was 120 days. But if we wanted to get a snapshot, we had to have individual reporting markets. So we had to know the reps, and I kind of went through the list. Wichita was a rep. San Diego was a rep. Knoxville was a rep, Conrad. We developed these, and Frank Romano helped with relationships, the individual cable systems. And when you break that down, let's call it the Knoxville rep or the San Diego rep or whatever market, a lot of times if you're in an area, then let's say Wichita, half the city of Wichita may be on one cable system. The other half was on another cable system. So you're getting, again, a smaller sample, and just that was difficult. But our friends at DirecTV, because they were, and I don't want to call it digital, but their number was more accurate earlier within 24, 48, 72 hours. They could kind of give you something, but all signs on Victory Road, to a little refresher, we did the weekly pay-per-views for a little over 2 years, not quite 2.5 years, but we transitioned, and our first monthly pay-per-view was Victory Road, and all signs were that it was very, very successful. And the thing that kind of, I'll say from the Dallas perspective, was they looked at the specific, okay, we did this number, but the ability to have a studio and know that those were fixed costs, if you will, it put a good marker in the ground that we were heading in the right direction. And this is pre-Spike TV.
There's a report that you guys are in major cost cutting mode here, which makes sense. We're still trying to dig out profit. We know we've been running in the red. And there's speculation that you guys were even considering moving your tapings to the weekend in the hopes that you might actually be able to get more fans in there. Of course, Universal Studios through the week, when it comes to the winter, it's kind of sparse. Lots of people are there in the spring and in the summer and even in the fall. But as we get closer to the holiday season and it starts to cool off and people are going to school, and well, the traffic's just not really there. So there was discussion, at least it's reported in the newsletters, that you guys were thinking about moving to the weekend. That is until the November 16th show. You had 850 fans there and you turned away more than double you ever had before. And I'm wondering, do you think it's because the product had gotten hot? Is it because you've signed Hall, Nash, Page, and Piper, and maybe Savage, and people think they're all going to be there? But it's written here that when you have this turnaway crowd, any idea you have about moving the tapings to the weekend, that dissipates pretty quickly. Do they have that right? Is that close?
And when I read this about the cost cutting, that was always ongoing. In full transparency, from Dallas, they just kept those are kind of some of the nightmares. They really kept a very, very tight rein on every penny spent. But moving the tape-ins and trying to figure that out, I think that the brand names that we hired were a component of it. It wasn't everything. I think more than anything, we were just trying to figure out our sea legs, because the marketing, local marketing, we talked about Russ Rollins and Monsters of the Radio getting on that radio show to create brand awareness. The park getting in there, in which you have to be at least 90 days, I think 120 days out to really fully immerse yourself in all park messaging. Like you said, in the winter months, look, this is pre-Harry Potter, and people may chuckle at that, but the Universal Studios Orlando was radically affected on their attendance, if you will, pre and post Harry Potter. It fundamentally changed their game. But in the wintertime, a lot of people are not completely dialed in. Yeah, of course, everybody in America is in school, and I'm talking about outside the holidays. But in the South Hemisphere, all of South America, those folks, it's their wintertime down there. So they look to make trips, summer trips and group trips. And so Bob Ryder and a couple other folks kind of got dialed into some travel agencies and travel groups that folks that may not necessarily be coming to the park, or the groups that were coming to the park. We sent flyers and messages and email blasts. Just the overall awareness just began to build, but it didn't happen overnight, because we had some lean shows those first couple of months. But and we were hesitant about putting it on weekends, because the guys that were out working independents, then that was going to turn into a conflict. But we got things headed in the right direction as far as attendance.
Well, let's get to the meat of the story today. I can't wait for us to talk about this. The Observer has a whole write-up about what was real and what wasn't with Hogan and Savage. Here's what's written. There was certainly speculation, and being wrestling, there would be, that the Hogan Savage thing was a work on their part without letting the company in on it. I just don't think it was, Dave wrote. I'd go so far as to say I'm pretty sure on this one. The idea that Savage would walk out just a few hours before showtime, causing them to have to rewrite the entire show, which Savage was prominently figured into, makes me think that isn't the case. Although if it is, nobody believes the company was a part of it. Also, if it was, they would have gone at it in public to try and fool people like DDP and Buff Bagwell and WCW, as opposed to Savage quitting and making himself look so bad. Savage and TNA officials were back talking on November 10th after Savage had no-showed, and came to terms a few days later that Savage would return. And when the 11/16 show was over, they'd officially announced Savage and Hardy and AJ Styles versus Jarrett, Hall, and Nash as the main event for the Turning Point pay-per-view on December 5th, which will be from Universal Studios in Orlando. I can't believe this is real, but Jeff, here's what Dave wrote. Savage has demanded that Jimmy Hart stay away from him the entire time he's there, or else he wouldn't come. Being that Jimmy Hart is such an intimidating figure, I guess. Hart had a nasty confrontation a year or so back on the Mancow show with Savage when they argued about Hogan. I'll be honest, I don't remember Jimmy Hart and Savage arguing on Mancow. Maybe we'll find that and post it on social if we can find it. but the speculation is always there. Was it real? Was it a work? We ask that about a lot of things that we hear that happen backstage in wrestling. It's one of the beautiful things about wrestling. But what say you? I can't imagine a scenario where this was, I mean, there's no way this was a work, right, Jeff?
No, I mean, you can't say it was, but no, I don't believe it was a work. Here's Conrad. This is,
Let me give you this before you go.
Yeah.
Brian Adams, who is Savage's current running buddy, that's the former Crush, in case you're keeping up, not the singer,
and he passed away,
was on Cowhead's radio show in Tampa and criticized how the Jarretts have treated Savage. He said they snuck Savage into the building to keep his appearance a secret, but then Hogan walked in where fans could see he was there, and everyone made a big deal about Hogan being there when they knew Savage hated him. He said the Jarretts knew it was unprofessional. I guess Savage felt if he was there, that nobody he doesn't like should be allowed to be there, or it's unprofessional. Like, this sounds like, man, what are we even doing? Aren't we trying to sell tickets and make money? This is a bunch of petty bullshit 8th grade girl infighting. That's the way it reads to me as a 43-year-old man who wasn't there. What do you make of all this?
Well, so here's to kind of dive into this. So this is November of 05, right? Yeah.
04.
04 or 05?
04.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm getting the year. Anyway. Yes. Because we had been there 2 months. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting the, but anyway. So I would say one of the 10 to 12 to 15, the last couple of months, we were in the asylum in Nashville. The Carters had, they never would give a real clear answer on this time, but me and my father went and found another potential investor. And, well, not potential, he was ready to rock and roll. And we found out in that meeting, and not far after that, that Panda wasn't going anywhere and had no interest in not even partnering, not even letting somebody come on at all. That was great news to me, because it cemented that, hey, they're in this for the long haul. I think my father had a lot of mixed emotions on a lot of things. This was, it's no secret that the TNA business specifically drove a big wedge in between me and him. He wasn't exactly happy with, I'll call it, my business decisions, not just creative, but kind of across the board. I get him. He's an alpha male. He wanted to run the show, or had always run the show when he had run business. So he had the connection and the relationship with Savage. And he also went back years, and it's been said that, Hogan and my father had a relationship. And when Hogan went to WCW, I think he's the one who told Eric, hey, call Jerry Jarrett, put him under a consulting deal. So they had that relationship. So I don't really know all the ins and outs. Nobody really knows except Savage and Jerry Jarrett, and now they're both passed, about it exactly. But it doesn't sound, even reading it 20 years later, none of it really jives up that Hogan and look, how bad did they really hate each other? Like you just said, okay, so they're going to go public, and Jimmy Hart and Savage are going to get in a spat on a radio show. That smells of a work. Brian Adams, me and him, he's me and him used to go get sushi together, and him to kind of publicly call us out. That doesn't smell right. None of it. But it's one of those deals that maybe they're working their own program, and Hogan may be working a program for Vince McMahon, and Savage may be working a program to try to create leverage for Jerry Jarrett with Bob Carter. None of it really adds up. It's to me a much ado about nothing. I was trying to, I'll call it, run a company, but man, here we are 20 years later still talking about it.
I know we didn't have these types of phrases, or maybe we did. It just wasn't in our everyday language and the lexicon of what we talk about here in America. But do you think Savage just had really, really poor emotional intelligence with the benefit of hindsight? I mean,
Well,
for him, I mean, this is just, hey, I can't see Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart, I mean, I better not see him. Like, what?
well, I mean, I considered me and Randy. I don't want to call us because I was such a fan of him, so I don't want to call us that we were ever tight, but we were buds. But him and my father, they had been legit worn back, and they knew each other on a level like not many guys do. Because when you fight against each other, and literally there's guns involved, and arrest involved, and police and bodyguards, and just all that kind of mess they went in. And then they had a great working relationship. They were tight. And my father would say, to the day he dies, he's never met a man that was more paranoid than Randy. Paranoid in life, not about just one situation or another, but across the board. And he always thought that he got it from his father, that Randy was, that it was like a family trait, just the lack of trust of life.
Well, let me ask you, I don't mean to cut you off, but did you spend any time with Lanny? Do you think Lanny was that way too? Because I've never heard that about Lanny.
No, I've never, no. And I hadn't spent a lot of time with Lanny, but I mean, nicest guy in the world, very professional. But it goes without saying, you can just hear both of them talk. I'm not talking about promos, but just hear, I mean, they are two different human beings. We're two different human beings in so many ways. Lanny, the poetry was a side of him, but he was much more soft-spoken. So I may be completely wrong, but I always looked at it that Lanny was like his mom, Randy was like the dad. That's how I took it.
You mentioned the war, and some of our younger listeners may not know this, but once upon a time, the Poffos ran a quote unquote outlaw promotion that went to absolute war and was calling out your dad's promotion. Eventually, cooler heads prevailed. Your dad, I guess, won, however you want to say that, and they did some business together. And then Savage launched into the WWF and became a megastar. But when you guys were at war, had you heard, for lack of a better word, that Lanny could toot his own horn? Is that something that people knew back then, that he could toot his own horn?
Silva, I'd love to see the look on your face right now, because we went from a war discussion, guns, territories,
to tooting your own horn.
Yeah. I mean, that was such a beautiful, as a masterpiece. Last week you did a transition that it caught me so quickly. I didn't even know what happened. You said one thing, and the next thing you know, you're talking about strutting and dancing. I mean, Today you went from, blasting horns to tooting horns in a matter of a breath, Conrad. How do you do that?
Well, I've always wondered, how did Lanny do it? Because I can't. I mean, when I was a younger man, I tried. Have you tried, Jeff? And were you able to toot your own horn?
I'm not a big, Scotty.
You're not a horn tooter?
I don't like to toot my own horn.
Well, I know Arn Anderson did, and he would say toot, toot. I mean, he's talked about it on TV. I'm just wondering, do you remember that ever being a discussion, or did that talk not happen until much later? Because I remember Ric Flair telling Peggy, who was a legendary Mid-Atlantic fan, come here, and showing her that Lanny could do that. So that would have predated, his ascent as the genius or leaping Lanny Poffo in the WWF. So it makes me think it existed back then. But I feel like when there is a war with an outlaw territory, you guys are going to be hammering that. You can't trust those guys. That guy toots his own horn.
So let hear me out on this. Lanny Poffo, Randy Savage, they are biological brothers, same dad, same mom, right?
Yep.
To your knowledge, I don't think I've ever seen a window card, a poster, a pay-per-view advertisement. Randy has been in the main event his entire career, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Lanny, on the other hand, I know in Memphis, he, had a couple of different runs and this and that, but he was really mid-card. I say this with diplomacy, mid-card at best, maybe opening match guy. So out of the two, who do you think had more of a legitimate ability to toot their own horn? Who do you think was the horn tooter out of those two, or should have been?
I mean, I think Savage was such a big star, he could get a line of people to line up to toot his horn for him.
I can't. We got to transition.
What? What? I'm not moving on until you tell me if you remember there being discussion about Lanny in the war.
Oh Lord,
being a horn tooter.
Angelo, literally, maybe to this day or for a long time, held the record for the most consecutive sit-ups ever. And I mean, so I know way back then.
Is that how Lanny learned how to do it? Doing all those sit-ups like his dad?
Lanny was tooting his own horn the day that I heard or saw Angelo, and Angelo told me the story in the dressing room. I'm positive.
What, you saw Lanny toot his own horn?
No,
Listen, if you'd like to toot your own horn, toot over and over to BlueChew.com. It's an online service that delivers you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. The process is simple. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part, it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew wants men rock hard. That's what they told me. That's the mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, until every tent is pitched, until every rod is raised. Discover your options right now at BlueChew.com. We've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free. Just pay $5 shipping at checkout when you visit BlueChew.com. That's BlueChew.com to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank BlueChew.com for sponsoring My World with Jeff Jarrett.
I can't believe it's real. Lanny Poffo was
toot his own horn.
Do you think Lanny, to your knowledge, God rest his soul, did you ever have a Blue Chew conversation with Lanny?
I did not. I only met him once at a StarCast, and he was wonderful. Yeah. He was sitting on Cassio Kid's girlfriend a lot. It was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Connie, you're the best transition man in the business.
Well, I'll be honest. I'm not transitioning until you tell me if you remember there was talk of that in the territory days or not.
Oh, I would have to say that that was.
I know this belongs on the DVD or sleaze thread, yes, but I'm wondering, do you believe?
And I'd love to see Silva's face on this, but you guys would crack up, because do you know who was probably the best conversationist that would give hypothetical questions and maybe be descriptive? And I'll say, as eccentric as he was at times, my old man and you could have a hell of a conversation about Lanny's ability to toot the Poffo horn.
All right. Listen, I'm going to tap. I give up. I tried, folks.
I've heard that conversation since before I broke in the business.
So it's a well-known deal.
Oh, legendary.
Okay. You were more of a rusty trombone guy, though, weren't you? Let's move on.
Let's move on.
Seriously, we're going to transition here, and I'm going to give you a pass. I know I was trying to hold your feet to the fire on that, but I'm going to give you a pass on this one.
Okay.
There's some ugliness that's written in the torch that I would totally understand if you're like, I don't really want to talk about that. But here's what was written.
Okay.
Jeff Jarrett had confronted Jerry last Tuesday about word he was getting about Jerry trying to oust him from power. Quote, Jerry sees this as a great time to steal power as Jeff is tending to his wife, says one wrestler who's usually a critic of Jeff and a supporter of Jerry. The feeling is that Jerry doesn't believe in the office staff that Jeff has assembled, and that it's been one of his big talking points. Quote, TNA has an office staff filled with guys who should not be running an office, said one TNA source. For months, Jerry Jarrett has been dropping details into conversations with people about the changes he'd make if he gained power in TNA. So the rumors last week of him making a power play came as no surprise to many within TNA. If Jerry were to gain control and Jeff were to lose control, The feeling is that Dutch Mantel, Bob Ryder, Jeremy Borash, and Tim Welch would lose power. Listen, I realize that, you guys had mended things and everything ended on a great note. And unfortunately, your dad's no longer here. And this is an ugly spot and it's family business. So I get if you want to take a pass. But do you remember hearing rumors about this? Was this real? Did you confront him? I mean, this feels, for lack of a better word, ugly.
Oh, it was, and look, that's why a second ago I was the time frame of 05, because I think the worst part of our relationship was in 05. But Conrad, this again, I'm going to say, my old man got really sour in that the boy who cried wolf, that Panda was so unhappy, or not so unhappy. They were frustrated and this and that and this and that, and which me and my father, the story, goes without saying, we'd put our own money up. We were in, we couldn't control the Screechy situation. We understood it. We went looking, they stepped up and willingly, and were super excited about it. And now at this point, they're, I guess, about 2 years into the investment. But we gave them opportunity to get completely out. We gave them an opportunity to get partially out. And when they just were kind of downright get the F out to our potential investor, I got it. They were in a position, maybe I didn't like the diplomacy they used, but I had zero control over that. Well, my old man really took offense to that. And I think that really soured him on, okay, this is, if they're going to treat this potential guy who, they're going to treat us this way. Anyway, it went bad. Well, that kind of domino effect started happening across the board. And so my father was not shy about voicing his opinion, whether it was with other talent, whether it was office, whether it was Dallas. And so he didn't mind knocking creative or talent or both, or why are we doing this, or why we do. I mean, one day he went nuts on the pyro. And I'm not going to say a lot of times when people say pyro, you just, what you see, you can also, they're called concussions and a bunch of different names, but the loud, it's like dynamite or fireworks, it's a big boom, and it rattles those studios. It rattles the building. He hated those. I mean, he was, not a spring chicken. But anyway, there was a lot of things. I'm trying to make the point. There was a lot of things he was unhappy about. And me being in the position of where I was at the company, I don't know what my title was, CEO at that time or whatever. But I was talent, creative, and production. That was under me. And so it got uglier. But Conrad, yes, it was ugly. The short answer is, but it was ugly. And there would be times that, like, Dutch, and I don't want to put it on just a Dutch or a Dixie or a JB, like, your old man didn't have very kind things to say. Because it would make them feel uncomfortable. And my dad knew that. He knew that it would make them uncomfortable. So yes, Conrad, there were some uneasy feelings going on professionally between us. Thank God for the last 7 years of his life. I'll say that.
You got past it in the last 7 years.
Way past. I mean, so far we laughed about it.
It's do you think it's one of those deals where wisdom comes with age, and maturity?
Well, for any parent out there or expected parent, I know, nobody gives you a manual and says, hey, here's how you're supposed to be a father or a mother. Most of the time you kind of do how you were raised. In business, my father had never worked with his son. And matter of fact, his son had worked for him since the day he broke in. And it, it goes without saying, he, by design, and I'm so grateful that he did, he made it as hard on me, or he wanted to, and would tell me, I'm going to make it harder on you than anybody else in the company, because you ain't getting a handout. The old thing, born on third base or whatever it may be. He knew the gift I had by being the promoter's son. So he wanted to compensate. I think a lot of times he overcompensated, but I'm glad he did, and made it very tough. Well, here we are. I wanted to start the company. I said, Dad, and he knew this, and we talked about this later. He could have said, no, I don't want to be a part of it. But he said, yeah, I'm in. I'm talking about day one conversations. The boat trip with Bob Ryder kind of gets spun into a fairy tale. But the reality is, came back from that, and I had to really put my mindset together and say, all right, do I want to do this? And if I'm going to go raise capital, the first question is going to be asking me, how much are you putting up of your own money? And so I decided, all right, I want to do this. And I went to my father and I said, do you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, I do. I mean, he thought about it. And I do. And I said, well, what's this split? I'll never forget this conversation. And I said, is it 50-50? But I know you don't like that. So it's going to be 51-49 one way or another. Or do you want to do 60-40? And he just said, what do you want to do? Because I've run my companies. I've done this. I've done that, all this. So what do you think? And I said, I don't know, but you have taught me a 50-50 relationship doesn't work in this industry and will never work because you have to have the buck stop with one person. So 51-49 doesn't feel right to me just because that 1% is important, but we're a father-son. So that you're going to have 49% of the money up, but all this. And I said, I just kind of think 2/3, 1/3. And he looked at me and he said, that sounds really fair to me. I'm in. So we had that conversation. And so as we move on down the field, it was hard to kind of forget those days for him, I guess, that, okay, he signed up and Jeff is the boss. But as we went along, he didn't like a lot of the things. So it just became a butting of heads. And he was so much more than the Russo situation or, the style of wrestling, the X Division. He was just really on the entire thing. And he had never been put since he got in the business, because when he got in, broke in, ran shows, he was the promoter, he was his own boss. Then he got in, and next thing you know, he's kind of booking the show, and nobody knew it because Roy Welch kept it quiet, but he was still calling the shots. And then he became the booker, and then he broke away, and he was his own company. So he had really never been in that role either. Now, granted, you just said wisdom, Conrad. It took both of us a long time because, look, I'd always worked for my father. I'd worked for Eric Bischoff. I'd worked for Vince McMahon. This was my first time truly being the buck stops with me. So throw all that into a high-strung, incredibly stressful, not just from a financial, layer in a sick wife for the second time, kids. My father had the health issue. For the first time, he had his heart issue. Conrad, when I'm just kind of putting all that together, going from weeklies to monthlies, and no wonder we went crazy. Therefore, it's just a lot of stress. But yeah, and you said wisdom. Yeah, it took us both a long time.
Let's talk about something else that happened. That's pretty big news in the wrestling world. This is around the time when the WWF comes to Universal Studios to record their Royal Rumble commercial. It was a spoof based on the West Side Story, and they had a lot of the characters dressed up as sort of throwback outfits and characters. And this is happening in Universal Studios where you guys are doing your show. So you're going to have a few guys go over. Abyss has got balloons, and other folks have cookies, and Shane Douglas is there with a microphone. Our old pal Road Dogg, he's got the white flag saying, hey, we're coming in peace. Allegedly, according to the Observer, one of the plans was to ambush Vince McMahon. They saw him once, they weren't ready. And then when everybody from TNA was ready, they never saw Vince again. The guy who we saw in Tough Enough, who was eventually going to be with TNA, we affectionately call him Big in the wrestling world. He was furious at this. Legal letters start going back and forth. They think there's going to be some giant confrontation. Instead, Heidenreich and Orton are just chopping it up with the guys because, despite what the internet wrestling community thinks, there is no such thing as a wrestling war, not within the talent. Everybody's friends with everybody. They're just doing their jobs. But this was certainly a PR stunt for TNA. And when these legal threats start coming, allegedly they call Jerry Jarrett and he says, we've got lawyers too, keep filming. And supposedly WWE communicates, if TNA films any of our WWE wrestlers and it airs, this is what they're saying to Universal Studios, we will sue your effing ass. And there's lots of stuff going back and forth. And he said, she said, were you there? And if not, what were you hearing about this?
Universal Orlando Studio was our home. The easiest part to say is it had been our home for quite some time. And Conrad, when we got word, now we, at this time, Soundstage 21, the biggest studio down there, we had moved in and that was our home. When we got word that the WWF, WWE at the time, was coming to film a spot, I first went, of all places they're going to pick. And look, there's 7, 8, 9, 10, there's 10, 11 different studios on the back lot. They shoot commercials. The Monday Night Football commercial was shot there for years. I mean, they've shot Ellen episodes. They've shot Fear Factor episodes. There's a lot of content that produced out of the studios. And so I get why the WWF, but I'm just thinking, they're really going to come there. So as that word kind of got around, whether it was a couple of weeks or a couple of months beforehand. So then it's like, all right, how do we kind of spin this into some fun, positive PR? And I mean, the mixed emotions. Oh, do we really want to do that? I'm like, guys, what are you talking about? Which you just kind of pointed on with the Orton thing. The talent don't give two craps. Let's go have fun with it. Let's make a statement that it's our home and we just want to welcome you in and to have a lot of fun with it. Well, then all of a sudden, I mean, I don't say things got serious, but, and I get it, if you're not there and people reading into it, and Biggs probably doesn't want to get in trouble, and the production companies that were all involved, they're like, what is going on here? It was much ado about nothing. All we were doing was just trying to play in and spin into a lot of fun. And there's the shot of Shane Douglas, Ron Killings, Conan, Abyss with the balloons, that we were just going to have fun, that we're welcoming into our studios and give them a gift. And Road Dogg, we were just going to have fun with it. But then all of a sudden, people started taking it a little bit serious. And anyhow, mission accomplished on our side, far and wide. But did I ever, or anybody really ever, expect that it was like, why'd you do that? Just to create some noise. That's all it was.
The rumor and innuendo is that Kevin Nash and Scott Hall said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to participate in that. Do you remember that?
I kind of do, because it was, I would say, childish, but it was like, hey, you don't need us for that. It's because we knew, go back to, we'll call it the DX invasion or the NW, it wasn't anywhere on that. We didn't expect that. It was truly kind of a one-off that they're coming into our backyard to shoot a commercial. How can we play into that?
Well, but the comparisons are certainly there from the
Yes.
NWO DX era. And I totally get why people would want to see Kevin Nash and Scott Hall involved in that. That makes total sense. But I also understand why those guys, especially Kevin Nash being a business guy, would say, what's my upside in doing this? Like, I lose any leverage and any goodwill I may have. And I don't know how long TNA is going to be here, but I know if I ever go back to WWE, I'm going to make more money. I'm going to take a pass. I'll sit this one out.
And look, Kevin or Scott might have called me and said, hey, do you want me involved in this? And I probably said, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. I mean, we're just going to have fun with it.
Well, we got to talk about something that maybe wasn't all that fun. There's a report here that the NWA Florida group, how am I saying this guy's name? Ron Niemi, or how do you say his last name?
Niemi. I think Ron Niemi.
Okay. Ron Niemi is apparently saying, we're not coming back to TNA. I'm not bringing you any more enhancement talent. Apparently, the booking fee for those guys was $100, and TNA had defended that because they said, hey, a lot of these guys only make $25 when they work a weekend show. We're paying them $100. But then when there's an about face and TNA says, we're not going to pay enhancement talent anymore, you're going to get exposure, so we're not going to pay you. Now, I know a lot of our listeners would say, well, that's not fair. But once upon a time, that was normal. A lot of guys didn't get paid for TV. This was a way to make your name, and then you would go make more money on the house shows. Even Vince McMahon did that. When you signed a WWE contract, you made like $150 for TV, and clearly that was a much bigger operation than what TNA is. But Ron takes this personally and says, quote, Many talents at this notice as they simply quit at this notice as they simply could not afford to take off work midweek and travel to Orlando for no pay. NWA TNA still owes some of these wrestlers and referees for their final appearances, checks which as of November 12th have not been sent, even after several requests to do so. TNA can talk all they want about how WWE is a bully picking on the smaller guy, but in reality, there's no smaller guy in pro wrestling than the indie wrestler struggling to make a name for himself, and TNA is doing nothing but take advantage of and bully these stars of the future. Man, what do you remember of this? Take us back to the decision. What was your relationship like with Ron? Is this him grandstanding for publicity, or is he batting 1,000 here and that's just the way it was?
So I can remember, again, we kind of touched on Panda cost-cutting measures and all that. And just kind of for a reference point, I can just kind of go back and think, hey, Jeff, well, can you give me, because they would, Panda, different folks there, they would say, can you kind of give me a history lesson, if you will? And I said, well, yeah, I'll do my best. And you just kind of reference, you sign in 93, I signed my contract with WWF, and it specifically put in there, you will be paid $150. Those times it was Raw, Superstars, and Challenge, but for a TV taping, that was what it was. Now, some of us that got on Coliseum home video, we would get a house show payoff. But that's what it was. For the first 7 years of my career, I worked Memphis TV every Saturday morning, and the pay was zero, literally zero. And that is going back to kind of the philosophy. We're going to put you on TV, and then you're going to have the ability to go make money in house shows. Well, obviously, the world has changed, and I totally understand how today a wrestling fan cannot even fathom that kind of mindset, because the days of the territories where you made your money on non-televised live events, there weren't any, it was TV and you made your money on house shows, non-televised live events. Then the model in the business was, in the 90s, go work your TVs, and that'll give you the ability to make your $100,000 payoff on a pay-per-view. But pay-per-view money was where it was at. Now we're in the world of TV rights fees and transitioning into streaming fees. I get it. It's a completely different model and everything that goes with it. But when it came to, here we are, 03, 04, 05, 06, all right, what is the reality? We're in Orlando, and the amount of independent talent that filled up our inbox, whether it was Terry Taylor or myself or Bob Ryder or Jeremy Borash. And we were kind of starting during this period to not use as many enhancement talent, that I said, guys, hey, we need to lower it. Because I think at one time we paid more than $100. But regardless, that was kind of the reality. And I'm sure Ron wanted to get his guys paid. Panda always paid. I don't want to say always paid late, but it was a cycle, and you had a monthly draw we had. And if there wasn't enough, the money allocated for the month, those checks got bumped another 30 days. And so I can see an enhancement talent getting bumped more than the 30 days into the 30, 60-day cycle. And that's just the way it was. Not pretty, but that's kind of the reality. But at the end of the day, the philosophy, I believe, because at AEW and WWE, there's guys that are enhancement or extras that we put there that come, and sometimes they get paid and don't do anything. Sometimes they paid and take bumps. But I'll go back to whether it's minor league sports or college. You can if you want to be a doctor, you got to go do your internship. There ain't a lot of money in that either. Matter of fact, school, you got to pay to go to school. So it's all kind of in the philosophy of digging into the business and what you want out of it. But again, this is to me, a newsletter story that was kind of much ado about nothing.
Let's talk a little bit more about Randy Savage. Here's what the Observer has to say. Randy's deal is for 8 dates. His demands to return, which TNA acquiesced to, were limo service from his home in Tampa to Orlando for every show, 2 security guards at $1,000 per night, which is more than all but the top wrestlers in the group are earning, and that Jimmy Hart would not only be nowhere near him, but also couldn't be in the truck or on the headsets whenever he was on television. Jimmy doesn't work in the truck to begin with. When Savage was out, he had Harris watching the gorilla position to make sure Jimmy wasn't there. In an 85-degree weather, Savage only took his jacket off once. Those who saw him said his arms looked shriveled up and that he's either going to work with a long sleeve shirt on or have some very quick changes if he's going to wrestle. Savage also demanded his own private dressing room, I guess to make sure nobody saw the physical changes we just wrote about. And as far as I know, there's only one photo out there of Randy during this era. Our man on Twitter, Ian Drew Dice Clay, posted it earlier this year. And I got to say, I don't think it's a bad shot. It's not a bad look for Savage. How much of what I'm reading here from Dave's report is true? Was it 8 dates? Was he asking for a limo? Was he asking for security guards? Did it get that deep? We can't have Jimmy on headsets. And did you think he looked, quote unquote, shriveled up?
Never did I think he looked shriveled up, period. The limo car service, that's a bunch of nonsense. I mean, and paying to security, I mean, it's just silliness.
Yeah.
It's all silliness.
We got to talk about some cost-cutting measures here. There's a report in the Observer as we cruise on into early December that says, according to several sources, the Carters and Panda must have given Jerry Jarrett the word they're wanting to pull out. Jarrett has told people he's on a time limit to find a new ownership group. The company has booked a February 13th pay-per-view date, which is the last pay-per-view date on the schedule at this point. It's been said that Jerry has gone to Bob Carter and suggested before pulling out, put him in charge of the company, and he'd be able to make it financially viable through cost cutting. It's very unlikely to happen since Bob's daughter has the position in charge of those financial decisions, which is why there was surprisingly very little advertising for the November 7th pay-per-view. Just how touch and go was this? Do you remember hearing from your dad or rumors and innuendo that, hey, the Carters are ready to pull out?
Who made that report?
Dave Meltzer.
Okay. I didn't know if it was Keller or not. I'm telling you, when we kind of had that meeting in Nashville, they tore the building down, but I could take you to the little office they put us in. It was me and my father, a couple of folks that we brought to the table, and Bob, and I think Todd was there. Anyway, there was a group from Panda, and it was, the takeaway from that was, nope, they ain't. They're all in, if you will, pardon the pun. And so this kind of stuff about the advertising in November and last pay-per-view, and that's probably the last date in demand. It's all newsletter hogwash. All of that.
Well, let's talk about some more hogwash. There's a report here in the Observer that Kid Cash did an interview with Power Slam magazine over in the UK, and he's pretty upset. He says, it's the politics, the favoritism, and every other company I've ever worked for, and I've been around a long time, there's always room for advancement. He's basically saying there's none of that here. Bob Ryder asked me if I watched the television show, and I told him I did, but I don't anymore because you can't tell if I even work here. They don't even have an explanation for anything. I've taken a lot of flack over the years because I tell you what's on my mind. They, meaning TNA management, never tell you anything straight. TNA wants credibility. They want the company to be credible enough to run with WWE. So they started realizing that the only thing that people are tuning in for is to watch the X Division. When I was in the X Division, it was exciting. It was guys like me and Jerry Lynn and Christopher Daniels and Elix Skipper, guys who know how to wrestle the cruiserweight style and tell a story in a match. Now they have guys in there who are in over their heads, who are buddies with people in the office. Don't get me wrong, some of these kids are good, but they do not have 1 ounce of ring psychology. They take a big bump off the top rope, and what do? They just kip right up. They have no selling ability, no microphone ability. The only thing they can do is big spots, but they can't even do their spots where they're supposed to go. If you watch an X Division match, all you see is a cluster of moves. TNA claims they don't have money in the budget to pay the wrestlers decent wages. They should at least pay us what we're worth. TNA says that they can't pay more because it's not in the budget. But then they bring in different people like Lex Luger, of all people, a washed-up guy with more demons in his closet than he can deal with. Wow. Goodness gracious. Kid Cash is my spirit animal. That dude's one of my absolute favorites. He's like cheap toilet paper. He don't take shit off nobody. What do you make of this this Kid Cash interview from Power Slam? Because I'll be honest, if we didn't know that what he was saying was him describing what he thinks about wrestling in 2004, I could say it's happening today in 2024. I see old timers today in 20 years later saying the exact same thing. I know Kid Cash was criticized at the time, but he said this 20 years ago. Was he right?
And guess what? In the 90s, I can remember, just this type of conversation has gone on since way before I got in the business. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. But as you were rereading that, because I read that in research as well, the immediate thought that it brought me to was talking to Dutch Mantel about him. Cash wore his heart on his sleeve, but he was a heat magnet, a working son of a gun, and he was controversial. And if he would get in the newsletters, they would lead the witness, and man, he would unload. Now, did I maybe not like it all the time, or Dixie or other people in the office? Sometimes he just shoot himself in his own foot, because it's hard to say, all right, we're going to go all in on you as a businessman and really get behind you, knowing that the very next interview he does, he could just unload again. But that was Cash, man. That was Cash. He cared about the business. He cared about his spot. He had a lot of compassion about it. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's not the best business decision to just completely vent for the whole world to hear, because then it puts you in a tough position as well as the company.
Well, somebody that's never going to put you in a tough position is our friends at True Classic. I'm loading up on True Classic for the guys in my life this year for Christmas, and I think you should too. They really understand what we want. Shirts that define your best features with a perfect fit. We're talking snug in the arms and chest with just the right amount of room in the midsection. And that's what we guys are looking for. We want things that fit us nice. We feel better about ourselves. It's more comfortable. They become our go-tos. But unfortunately, when we find a shirt that we really love, we just wear it out. Well, that's where True Classic comes in. Now they've got their best-selling t-shirts, hoodies, jeans, and more in 3, 6, and even 9 packs. My wife wore a pair of pants the other day, and I said, honey, you need that in every color. Well, True Classic can hook you up. We're talking premium products at an affordable price. They've even got all your fall and winter must-haves just in time for the holidays. How about long-sleeve Henleys or waffle hoodies, the jeans, the button-ups, the joggers, and more? They've even got great active wear that's moisture-wicking, quick dry, and even has odor control. You can even mix and match your clothing to work with your lifestyle. There's a 100% perfect fit guarantee and easy returns, trusted by more than 4 million customers and over 200,000 reviews. True Classic's ultra comfortable, perfect fitting essentials make for the perfect gift for the men in your life. The holidays are here, and True Classic's ultra comfortable, perfect fitting essentials make for the perfect gift for the men in your life and yourself. So if you're ready to upgrade your closet, shop now and unlock big savings during their huge holiday sale. Just go to our exclusive link at trueclassic.com/myworld to save. That's trueclassic.com/myworld. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. And end the year with holiday cheer, thanks to True Classic.
TC, Connie, that's the code word around here that the Queen uses, helping me pack the other day. She said, what do you want me to dry or whatever, getting the clothes like that? And I said, I want my new black shirts and I want that gray one. She said, just all your TC? I said, say what? She said, because she can read. I said, it's TC. I said, what the hell are you talking about? She said, True Classic. I said, yeah, just put the TCs on the dresser. Took them out to Texas, took them to full care. They are fantastic. Fantastic.
Go check it out. True Classic. You'll be glad you did. So, hey, man, we're finally here. We're at the pay-per-view. Along the way, there's speculation that maybe Bob Ryder was upset that he had been owed some money for a while and hadn't been paid. Before we talk about the pay-per-view, is that kind of what you were talking about, that Panda was just starting to slow pay a little bit? Like he was handling some of the travel through his agency. Maybe he'd put them on his credit card or run through his business. And normally you would get those invoices paid on a 30-day turn. And, maybe instead of it being net 30, it rolled to 60 or 90. Is that what it is?
And see, this is where I get Panda was really, really good to Bob Ryder, really good to him. And he would make the call to put it on his credit card that anyway, it's an accounting deal. But again, this is a news story that either somebody chatted to somebody, said it to somebody. But Bob, at the end of the day, the company card that was buying, we'll call it 90 or 95% of the travel. But at times, Bob, and I'll give him that, because Orlando, man, all these kind of stories bring back fond memories. Connie, in the South these days, Southwest hub for Orlando, or a lot of flights in and out of there, they would do these flash sales, and Bob would jump on it with his card, and because it wasn't in the budget or all this, knowing that it was. So Bob was doing the company a favor. The company appreciated that, but then all of a sudden, when you get into draws and money and how the top level of Panda looked at, okay, this is the cash flow that were coming there, and the pay-per-view money coming in, and TV money, or whatever it was, but they only wanted so much going out. So it kind of became an accounting deal, but Bob was always handled. He was taken care of.
We're here finally to talk about the pay-per-view. I want to encourage you, go right now to the TNA YouTube and watch Turning Point 2004. It's fantastic. And it's written here that this is, I guess, allegedly Dusty Rhodes' first show as head booker, but it is noted that all the key matches were booked by Dutch Mantel and Jeff Jarrett before the change. And the show, this is a real sentence from Dave Meltzer, with much of the talent recognizing the straits the company is really in, the TNA promotion pulled off one of the best pay-per-view shows in wrestling history on December 5th in Orlando, paced by an off-the-charts cage match with AMW versus Triple X, with the losing team having to break up. Allegedly, Dusty had slotted them for 25 minutes. It went 21 minutes. We're going to talk about that match in great detail. But I'll be honest, when we put this, we try to lean on anniversaries and things like that just to be topical. When we first put this on the schedule, even I didn't quite remember that, hey, wait, this is that show? This is that show. You know which one I'm talking about if you've ever seen Elix Skipper in that cage. There's around 700 fans here, and the response level in the Observer, their reader poll, is down about 29% from Victory Road. So curiosity certainly peaked with Victory Road. The speculation is, hey, if that show got 35,000 buys, this one should come in around 25,000 buys. And the show is filled with a lot of comedy knocks towards WWE. This is, again, fresh off of that whole Royal Rumble commercial situation. You guys have the ring announcer Tim Welch dress up like Vince McMahon. He comes in on a limo with what's supposed to be Triple H, which is Johnny Devine of Team Canada. He's wearing a wig and a sledgehammer. They're sort of leaning into their Billionaire Ted skits. What do you remember about this segment?
I was going to leave with that. The kind of the in the vein of a Billionaire Ted deal, and Tim Welch, who, shout out to Tim. He's a banker up in the Springfield, Illinois area. I get to see him from time to time when I head up there and do baseball work, but he was an assistant in the office that could do a pretty damn good Vince McMahon walk and impersonation. And, on these kind of things, and again, I'm going to go back to the time frame of my father, happy, unhappy, me, tried to just keep the train on the tracks and growth. And not only that, I'm still working as a talent, but booking and creative, and kind of the pressure. And Dusty had flown out and went to the ranch, not to Dallas, went to the ranch in West Texas to have a meeting with the Carters. And Dusty, where he was at in life, it was, he wanted a job and more security. And Panda, to their credit, they were always, can we do better? Do we have the right team here? Can it just across the board, they maybe too much that they never were, I'm sure in 2013 when they were staring down that barrel when Spike went away, they might have had some second thoughts, but they always want to do a little bit better, or thought they could, or thought they should. But so you have this kind of dynamic. I'm dealing with home, my father's situation, Dusty kind of moving in. It was not the easiest set of circumstances for not just me. I'm talking about company wide. And then going back to your question of the balance, is this going to be man, when people buy a pay-per-view, you get into that just like they did at Full Gear. Okay, so that's on the zero, that's on the free show. Are they really paying to see that? Well, a lot of people on that reaction that you could get into a whole nother conversation, but we wanted to deliver on the main event matches because I'm a big believer that people, you buy for the brand and the show and all that, but you better have that one or two main events that people really want to see. And then the rest of the show has to be as entertaining as possible. So us inserting it at the time or today, this day, Conrad, I think we call it the cookies and balloon gate, because that's all we were going to give them was some cookies and balloons as a welcoming gift. How do we play off on that? Do we still lean into that? But it was the Billionaire Ted skits for sure.
I want to remind everybody this segment ends when they have the little guy, Teo, the little person, come out to beat up Vince McMahon, who's screaming that he's going to sue and he's writhing in pain. And where's my son-in-law, that idiot? And then we show the clip of what you guys filmed. It wasn't anything crazy, but it felt like a big thing at the time. And David Sahadi has a whole story about this that you will not believe, that is over at adfreeshows.com. We might push the clip out on My World Social, but if you'd like to see the whole David Sahadi interview, I encourage you, go out of your way to check out adfreeshows.com. We have an episode called The Insiders with David Sahadi, and you won't believe the fallout and maybe the pettiness of Kevin Dunn and how it hurt David Sahadi's feelings and his family. All of that available now at adfreeshows.com. There was one dark match that day. It was Andy Douglas and Chase Stevens beating Mikey Batts and Jarrell Clark. And then it's time for the pay-per-view. We get Eric Young and Bobby Roode coming out as Team Canada.
Hey, quick question. Has Frankie Kazarian ever wrestled Frankie Batts? No. Mikey Batts or Jarrell Clark?
Oh, yes, he has.
Are you okay? That's another podcast. That's maybe Cage Match will give the results.
Now, of course, what you're alluding to there is when a TNA official that you hired
Here we go.
put a hit out on Jarrell Clark and broke his rib and put him on the shelf. Like, when did you realize you were part of the wrestling mafia? Yes. I know the Memphis Mafia is a thing, but a lot of people felt like that went out with Elvis, but little did they know the Jarretts, man.
So you know what?
You might wake up with the catfishes, if you know what I'm saying.
So this is for another podcast, but you've got Learning Lucha, you've got Memphis Memories, you've got the Insiders, you've got the book with David Crockett. I'm doing pretty good here. You've got this whole kind of list. Conrad, you've got the game with Efren. Should you start maybe a new series and do our version of Wrestler's Court, where we get like a story?
Jeff, it's already happening. We just announced it today as we're recording. We ran the vignette. Wrestler's Court with JBL debuts next Monday.
Are you serious?
I swear. It's a part of Something to Wrestle With. John Layfield. Wrestler's Court is now a part of adfreeshows.com. For real.
I'll be damned. People aren't.
I'm not going to give you the spoiler, but there's something fun I have up my sleeve that you're going to really like. Wrestler's Court.
That's what I was saying is that whole nonsense story of
it's not nonsense.
Okay.
I've got testimony from people who were involved, people who were there.
I will defend myself. I didn't have a clue to what any of that. I'm not even sure it's true.
Let me just give you a spoiler.
Okay.
Not only is it a real story, but the person who ordered the hit, who worked for you in TNA, one of your lieutenants, he's one of your coworkers today.
Shut the front door.
So I'm not going to say their name because they're still actively involved in wrestling, but hits happen in wrestling and they happen in your company on your watch and you allow it. You're a mob boss. You're the Castellano. You're the Teflon Don. That's who you are.
You know what I do.
And you're running around with the Rizzler. I don't know how far back this goes, if I'm honest. You going to be laying out in the street in front of Sparks restaurant one day soon?
Danny DeVito.
We got Team Canada picking up a win here over 3 Live Crew. They're going to win the tag team titles. It is a really fun match. Scott D'Amore is going to distract the referee, Rudy Charles, who misses the count. With the ref distracted, Johnny Devine hits Road Dogg with the hockey stick, and Rude gets the pin. It's a fast-paced match.
Jesus.
As I understand it, Conan missed the match. I think Conan was supposed to be here. He's instead working the big AAA show. Was that always an issue with Conan? He was just looking for the better deal, and Lord bless him.
Well, I mean, but no, he look, me and him, we've been to hell and back, but he's business. He was managing the guys, but Conan, I can't say never didn't give us a heads up, but in this kind of circumstance, he knew that, okay, AAA, I can be the boss down there at TNA. I'm going to help out. What a contributor, the 3 Live Crew. And but it was Ron and Brian. So he had 2 of the members, but where I was going with this, I don't want to lose my train of thought. This pay-per-view, and Meltzer gave it a lot of, but I'm talking about during this time frame, Conrad. Our opener was Bobby Roode and Eric Young versus Ron Killings and Road Dogg. Yeah. Our roster right here,
loaded
during this time frame. Very blessed. I'll just say that. I was very lucky to get these guys all on one show, all on one time frame.
Let's talk about the next match. We got Hector Garza and Sonny Siaki and Sanjay Dutt, my man, teaming up to take on Michael Shane, Frankie Kazarian, and Kid Cash. And there's a sprint of high spots here. So, Kid Cash loved it. And here's what's written in the Observer. Smartly, Sonny Siaki did almost nothing. Goodness. Garza tried a monkey flip, slipped, and nearly landed on his head. That was the big snafu and brought brief "you fucked up" chants from a crowd that was clearly ECW or Ring of Honor inspired. There's a lot of enthusiasm here, so that's a good thing. The fans are paying attention and they're into it. But that does feel like that was a period in time. We don't hear "you fucked up" chants anymore. Why do you think that was in fashion then and it's out of fashion now, Jeff?
What? You know how it's just kind of a wrestling that those what chants got in for a while on every in-ring, and Stone Cold was, I'll call it long gone, but he had been gone for a while. It's, now I truly believe, because I've witnessed, there will be times during a show that there hadn't been of "this is awesome," that the people just want to start chanting that. There's certain chants, and I'm not saying disrespect for any specific match or high spot or anything like that, but the fans today, they like to do their chants, just like in the UK, their version of football, our version of soccer. They have the patented different chants and songs and all that kind of stuff. The wrestling crowd has evolved through the years, because the "you effed up" chants there for a while. You could have the slightest bit screw up, and you would hear those chants rattle out. That's a good observation, that we don't see that today as much as we used to. But now there's just different chants. I just think it's the evolution of the audience.
It's interesting too, because I wonder how much of that is because the performers are on social media now and they see them more as human beings and people, or is it something like botchamania that exists and now these moments are almost sort of celebrated and they're cheered rather than booed? Or is it just our society has become a little nicer, which during this last political cycle I wouldn't have agreed with, but it's definitely different. Like, I remember the "you effed up" chants being such a big part. They used to have "she's a crack whore" chants in the ECW arena. Nothing like that would happen in 2024.
Well, okay. So you said something that people treat more like humans. I'm going to kind of throw a flag on that, because the tribalism, and you kind of hear some crazy stuff on there. And I'm just talking about in wrestling, in politics, in football and basketball, the rivalries. People would just go off the hinges if you don't have to actually, it's easy to tweet, post, comment on that because you don't have to come face to face. Nowadays, in public, I'll call it kind of the cancel culture. You start screaming, you effed up, then all of a sudden, that's kind of like, did you really say that? You offended these. The society is changing on the public presentation or the public perception. You don't want to get canceled, I guess would be, I don't know, Conrad. That's a good little debatable point. We could probably really get in a rabbit hole. I don't have enough carrots for that today.
Well, let's talk about the next match. I know you got some carrots for this. It's Monty Brown and Abyss in what's called a Serengeti survival match. The rules were you could win by pin, submission, or slamming your opponent into thumbtacks. Of course, Monty Brown in a promo called Abyss obese. And Abyss goes for an earthquake splash sitting on Brown, who's laying on a chair. But Brown gets the chair, smashes it on Abyss's groin. I mean, this is some pretty crazy stuff that we're seeing here. Abyss, for what he lacks in pro football knowledge and quarterback IQ, and his pickers broke, as my grandma would say, when it comes to football teams. It feels like he pulled out all the stops on pay-per-view. Monty Brown is a favorite here on My World. Dave gave it 2.25 stars or 2 3/4 stars. What'd you think?
Abyss, and I echo all that. His football IQ is in the negatives. Fantasy even worse. But no, when he put his mind down, and Monty, well, I can't say to my knowledge, I mean, he was universally really, he came, former NFL player, but he just came to work, if that makes sense. I mean, look, he loved to laugh and cut up and all that, but you knew Monty was about business. And when you push all the BS aside, and I think this is why Abyss, or shall I say, Chris, is so successful today. You can laugh and cut up and have fun and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down, all right, let's talk business. Let's do business. Both of those guys, they put their game face on and just flat out got it done. Abyss's calling card is the tax and all that kind of stuff. But Monty, his explosive moves, it was a go out of your way to watch this. It's a good, hard-hitting match. Those guys had good chemistry.
And by the way, I love me some Dave Meltzer, but he was an absolute dickhead to Abyss in the write-up about this match. Thankfully, Dave's gotten a lot better, but man, he was just unnecessarily assholey into Abyss because that dude's pulling out all the stops, and I don't know. Tell us what you thought of the match and keep your bullshit to yourself.
There you go.
Next up, Johnny B. Bad and Pat Kenny are going to get a win over Glenn Gilberti and Johnny Swinger. That gets 1.25 stars. Why did you not let Pat Kenny just be Simon Diamond? I mean, he had established that name a little bit in ECW. Why didn't Simon Diamond work for TNA rather than Pat Kenny? Why?
And maybe it was a miss on my part, but I'm a big believer that let me ask you, okay, because you were an ECW fan. Give me the elevator pitch of who Simon Diamond was.
I don't have one.
Yeah, I say that like I like the name, it's cool and all that, but when you hear,
I like Simon Says as a thing.
Yes,
but
I do too.
Why did you like Pat Kenny better? Can you give me the elevator pitch on Pat Kenny?
The Irish branding, Irish Pat. When you look at him, an Irish tough guy. There's nothing flamboyant about the man Pat Kenny, but he has a delivery that you go, okay, if he's serious, he's going to kick your ass. And I wanted him to kind of interchannel, and I don't want to call it stereotypical, but the tough Irish guy that we all have seen portrayed in movies. That's who that's what I wanted brought out. Did we ever get there? Probably not. But I like the Irish branding, Irish Pat.
Next up, something that you wouldn't have imagined happened in TNA, but it did. DDP beat Raven in a no DQ match. I say it's no DQ because there's lots of interference, but there's no call for the bell. You get guys out in hoods. Eric Watts is going to protest that this is unfair. He's going to get involved. And it's written here, the bout was considerably better than it reads. as it was Raven's best match in a long time until they got so cute that the finish was one of those fuzzy things that meant nothing. 3.25 stars. But here Dave is praising the match and saying it's one of Raven's best. And I know that over the years, a lot of people have given Diamond Dallas Page a lot of shit for, scripting his matches, move for move, note for note, beat for beat. But Savage was the guy he looked up to, and Savage did that, and he did it pretty doggone well. I say I don't care if they script everything. I like good wrestling. I like good matches, and I don't care how we get there. Like, I've never bothered to worry about the recipe. Like, does it taste good? Okay, I'll eat it. And these guys were eating it here. What do you think made this DDP Raven match so good? Was it DDP's attention to detail or something else?
They liked each other personally. They trusted each other. That probably goes at the very top. They knew their, I'll say role because that sounds a little harsh. They knew what the end game was. And so, look, does Raven have ego? Yep. Does DDP have ego? Yep. But when you put them in there together, they knew that there's going to be a healthy give and take, and that's a great recipe of working with guys. And, the DDP sitting under the Savage learning tree, and when you kind of look back, and I know everybody has a kind of a different flavor in all this, but, when you go from, I'll call it the territory wrestling, that non-televised, that you only were playing to the audience in the arena, you didn't have to have all of it laid out because you really could play into, okay, I'm going to see what this particular crowd is going to give me tonight. When you get into a televised or a pay-per-view and now streaming audience, you better have some forethought. And so DDP, I'll never forget in Chicago that night on my first world title, he had the stylus out and the T-Mobile flip kind of deal. And it's an attention to detail that, and this is what at the end of the day, this is the most important thing, I believe, in laying out, whether it's a 3-minute match or a 30-minute match. If you put the nuts and bolts down, it's like the architectural drawing plans. If you put the base down and then you're going to do some more drawing and put the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one, then the fifth one, and you have on top of it 7th, 8th, and now you're down into lighting and landscaping and all the different layers to build a house or build a match. It's the forethought that if you just have step 1, you're not even thinking about step 7, and things just get better. Well, a guy like Raven and a guy like DDP who will get in a room and talk matches the way before the day of, it just makes things work. And here you have Meltzer being given it some good praise. That's the results you get of having a good match. And the people in the arena. I remember my singles match with DDP at TNA, and DDP is a gamer, man. He comes to work and works hard and delivers.
Do you think in hindsight DDP was a missed opportunity for TNA? I mean, he wasn't there very long. It doesn't feel like you guys did a ton with him. It feels like if you had a do-over on a handful of talents, we've talked about Monty Brown being one that got away. It feels like DDP could have been a much bigger player for TNA.
He wasn't interested in anything long-term. And I don't know the time frame, if it was where he was at with the DDP yoga or his studios or even his own personal life. He wasn't in it for, I don't want to say the long haul. We had a fantastic working agreement, but he came in and went. To my best recollection, it's not like he wanted to continue to do a lot of dates.
Next up, a great 4-star match that goes 18 minutes with Petey Williams retaining the X title, beating Chris Sabin. They're off the charts heat here. Fans are really into it. They're going back and forth with dueling chants. Let's go Sabin. Let's go Petey. They're doing planchas into Hurricane Ranas on the floor, power bombs on the guardrail, just all kinds of crazy, innovative stuff. They're even doing the Don Fry Takayama punching spot that got all that attention over in Pride in Japan. It's a big time match for these guys, and it's third from last. 4 stars, really incredible performance from these guys. And it shows you what the X division was all about. And what's interesting is it's not the last match on the show. It's third from the last, but it was a really worthwhile main event level match. But here comes the star power for the next one. It's Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles, and Randy Savage. Yes, Randy Savage is here. And they're going to be taking on Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Jeff Jarrett. They go nearly 18 minutes. You guys show up dressed like the kings of wrestling. Elvis in jumpsuits with Elvis wigs. What can you tell us about this match? This has got to be the little kid in you thinking, oh my God, I'm getting to wrestle with Randy Savage. It had to be a bucket list item for you, right?
Well, and I had worked with him a few times in the territory and all that. But so at this stage, it was about TNA and the branding. And again, like, I don't want to lose sight of the fact of, look at how we're closing the show. This is something that I don't know how many times I had the conversation with my father, and, you know, the principles that he would, you know, just hold so tight to, that, you know, a definitive heel and babyface, and the people got to get emotionally involved. But when you look at our last 3 matches of this event, the X Division, look, you just said dueling chance. It's funny you said it, but anyway, you had the dueling chance, and it was, you know, as much as maybe some old school fans don't like to really hear it, was it was as much or more about the performance as opposed to who won or lost. Now, not every match can be that way, because when you really drill it down into it, you got to have the heat and the comeback, and you got to really build the story where Cody Rhodes finishes the story. You really want to see him win, because that's the story arc that makes people feel good. And we could give thousands of examples, but the X Division match, that was 2, we'll call them young guys, you know, wrestling the X Division style. And then we transitioned right into an 18-minute 6-man tag, and Kevin Nash was not going to be taking high-flying bumps, and Scott Hall wasn't either, and Jeff Jarrett was going to be doing as many flatbacks as possible. But you have AJ Styles, and did you really lay out a match where he could showcase all of his ability? Probably not. Jeff Hardy could get in his few high spots, but you're seeing arguably the number 2 box office attraction in the history of the business in Randy Savage. So what going 18 minutes and kings of wrestling. That was our entertainment. And then we'll get to the tag in a minute. But yes, Conrad, I was pretty fired up. Not maybe the kid in the candy store as a little kid. I think I'd had been through that, but to be positioned as a company. And again, Hall and Nash, this is 04, 05. We're only 3 or 4 or 5 years from those guys being the hottest thing in the entire industry. I don't say by far, but yeah, by far. The NWO at one time was way head and shoulders above everything else.
2 years prior to this, Scott Hall was wrestling Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania. I mean, just for some context, that's where we are.
Yeah.
It's written here, Styles worked for 5 people, but that wasn't enough, although the match was more than decent when he was in, and that was most of the way. He made a cold tag to Hardy, and the match fell apart from there. Hardy had Hall pinned when Nash pulled referee Andrew Thomas out of the ring. Hall hit Hardy with a guitar shot, and Savage finally showed up, and he made Hall and Nash look youthful. Backstage, I was told Savage looked 100 years old. I thought on TV he didn't look a day over 60, although he did look older than Lou Thez when I saw him do a show in 96, and Lou was 80 then. Savage threw a few punches and put Jarrett in a sleeper. Jarrett tried a sunset flip. Savage blocked it and punched Jarrett to the head and got the pin. Was that a detail that he wanted? He didn't want to be involved from the very beginning. He wanted less is more, or is that your creative call? Like, he's the big star. This is his big thing. Let's make him do the whole Spirit of 76 thing at the end.
It was kind of how old? Well, I'm just saying, how old is Randy at this stage? Because I can remember, I guess you could say, in the layout of the match, just handling this entire thing with kid gloves, in that, hey, Randy, do you want me and you to start? He's 5 years younger than you are now. See, that just, which, doesn't that blow you away, Conrad?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, I say that because Savage got as big as a house in WCW. He was almost overinflated.
Yeah.
That was never really something that you did.
I got you.
You've kind of looked like Jeff Jarrett. I know, you needed to add a little mass when you first started, but by the time you started with the WWF, to me as a fan, it looks like you're kind of the same size as you were back then. Are you?
For sure. And
So I'm just saying the stress of that.
My weight is exactly the same. It's just when you take out the
bread in the can.
Bread in the can, when you take that out, I look leaner.
Yes. So I'm just saying that really wasn't Randy's thing. Randy was from a different era, I think. It's just a few years younger or a few years older, where it was all about size, and he's in the land of the giants, and he felt like he needed that. And I think, whenever you see that weight fluctuate up and down, it ages people. It makes them look older. And you never got overinflated. You're kind of the same guy we saw in 93 or 94 or 95 or whatever. And I would argue that you somehow look better today. And you just told us why. No more bread in the can. I mean, you look better today than you did back then. That wasn't really Randy's thing.
Yeah. Okay. That being said, I remember to the match dealing with everything like kid gloves. Because again, Kevin and Scott were not young guys either, and that was never their thing. So we got to put this 6-man, and just what Meltzer said. Hey, AJ, you've got to do your work and the work for, I'll say egotistically, 4 other guys, because I'll carry my load. But that was kind of the mindset, that it was going to be me, Jeff, and AJ working the body of the match. And when Randy was like, no, let me just get in there at the end and do, and it psychologically, it made sense. So the 5 of us had to have that, 15, 16, 17-minute match and bring Randy in on the end. So by design, it was all kind of laid out. Again, I think the success of a show, it will go without saying, is you got to have variety. You absolutely got to have variety, and then put people in positions to do it on pay-per-views, to do what they do best, and hide all the negatives or diminish the weak spots or whatever it may be. And you kind of have a recipe for success there if the variety is done right and positioned correctly.
I got to ask you, what the hell's up with the Elvis shtick?
So who do you think was a huge, just absolutely almost mandated that?
Scott Hall.
Yeah. He was into it, but Kevin was, I think Kevin was like, all right, he's my buddy. Let's get him engaged. And if we make kind of our deal, and it's kind of Scott's idea, he's probably going to be bought in even more. I don't know if that makes sense. And I thought as a pairing, look, the NWO, we couldn't use it anyway, but we don't need to do anything that is kind of, we're taking over or anything like that. Let's just kind of go with this. And I had been King of the Mountain, and okay, Kings of Wrestling, and Scott in the jumpsuits. Hell, let's go for it. It wasn't going to be a long-term deal anyway. I mean, that it was never planning on being, okay, this is the new faction and this is the new 4 Horsemen and we're taking over. It was never that. How can we just connect the dots of these 3 guys for a short term? And that was the Kings of Wrestling.
I got to ask you, do you think if he was anybody other than Randy Savage, the juice would have been worth the squeeze? I mean, it feels like you guys made a lot of concessions, jumped through a lot of hoops, and I know you're thrilled that you were able to pull it off and you got the match in the ring, as Vince would say, but it doesn't feel like he's ready to perform. Is that fair to say?
So, more than fair to say. And I quit thinking about it, but there was a time frame, Conrad, that we're going to kind of go back to the politics. Randy wanted to do something with us, and it's one of those things that, yeah, he had worked with Jeff, but this is the Jarrett's deal. And hey, man, there's some buzz on this. They're going to take care of me. I'm not going to go back to WWF. We're the only alternative. Let me kind of dive into it. And then he got there, and oh boy, there's some drama. Jeff and Jerry aren't getting along. Oh boy, whatever this Hogan peripheral thing was, wait a minute. Do I really want to work with Scott and Kevin? I need, not everything kind of jive with him. And so I think he had mixed emotions once he kind of got on board. And again, I'm going to go back to the paranoia personality trait that he had. so if he's paranoid about everything, that's including himself. I think he was super paranoid about how he would be perceived post WCW. I think that played into a huge part of the trepidation of just getting in there and accepting his age and maybe his mobility and his skills, because Randy was a big believer in perception and how the Macho Man was perceived worldwide, and he didn't want to tarnish it. And I got that.
Now it's time for our main event. And if you're going to watch one match from this show, although there were a lot of great matches, Raven and DDP, that opening tag match, Sabin and Petey Williams, there's so many memorable moments on this show. I think this is probably the definitive TNA match that I would recommend almost above all others. I know there was a three-way dance that people get really excited about, and it was great. But this tag match to me is probably the most memorable and greatest match in TNA history. I'm talking about America's Most Wanted. Chris Harris and James Storm taking on Elix Skipper and Christopher Daniels. We know them affectionately as America's Most Wanted and Triple X. And this is a 6 sides of steel match with real stakes. Whoever loses has to break up. And they pull out all the stops, and I mean all of them. But there's a spot on here that is the most dangerous thing maybe we had ever seen in wrestling up to that point. And think about what a statement that is. We've all seen The Undertaker walk the top rope, and man, we were impressed to see it. And every time we see Commander do it on AEW in 2024, it blows people away. My mom couldn't believe what she saw on the pre-show this past week as we were waiting for QT Marshall to lay the wood to old Big Boom AJ. But Elix Skipper got on top of this damn cage in front of all these fans in a soundstage and walked across the top of the cage and did a Hurricane Rana to the canvas. It is the most dangerous, crazy thing. I'm glad we never saw it again. But you want to talk about disaster. If Elix Skipper falls from up there into the fans, onto the floor, onto a guardrail, man, it is a Mick Foley level devastating bump. But Elix Skipper pulled it off. And the result is that's the high spot and the thing everybody talks about. But even if you take that one spot away, it was an incredible match. It was an old school cage, although with 6 sides, with a lot of blood, a lot of psychology. The crowd is chanting best match ever. Mike Tenay is telling us we're seeing one of the greatest cage matches of all time, and Meltzer says that wasn't even a stretch by this point. It's fantastic to the point that the fans, the entire crowd, gives the teams a standing ovation for several minutes. The heel dressing room comes out and gives a standing ovation to Triple X because they've lost the match and they're going to have to split up. It blew away their match that they had 17 months prior. And even Dave Meltzer said, probably the best match in TNA history. 4 3/4 stars. It would have been 38 stars if it was in the Tokyo Dome. But goodness gracious, you want to talk about a match, a moment? This is it, isn't it?
I don't even want to start my comments by saying this, but how does Meltzer not give that a 5-star? But that's a whole nother podcast. I mean, that's a whole nother, you know what I'm saying, Conrad? Yeah. So
I don't know what you want when you got the entire crowd chanting best match ever and giving a standing ovation. It's a visual. I mean, listen, we know that he has his tastes. And I think because this match happened in TNA, it automatically lost a 1/4 star.
Well, Kurt Angle, and that when you talk about the best matches in TNA history, Kurt had.
Show us with your hand. Make a gesture. Show us how many 5-star matches Dave Meltzer gave to Kurt Angle in his total cumulative career. That many.
Zero. And I look, me and Kurt have had our ups and downs, but man, oh man, when he's on,
ain't nobody like him.
The Shawn, yeah, we could go through a list. That's getting outside of TNA, but the Shawn Kurt match and Shawn
Where does this match rank for you, all-time TNA? I think it's my number one. Where is it for you, Jeff?
So this tag and look, because I don't say every year, every 3 months, every 6 months, every 9 months, you're putting together a new sizzle reel. You're putting together a pitch deck. You're putting together best of DVDs. You're putting together a DVD on America's Most Wanted, or a DVD on best tag matches, or the best of Triple X, or you start figuring out, all right, best gimmick matches, like how many different iterations this match kind of is the waving the flag. And then so when you start talking about the match and you watch it back, and I've seen bits and pieces of this countless times because of reels and highlight reels and all that. But when you look, and I'm going to say the 5, because I don't think I think people, you notice the ref when he screws up in this match. My man Rudy Charles, he's just really good at what he does. That's why he's still doing it. You want to talk about Elix? Damn, what a move! Then you want to talk about the glue of Daniels, especially at this stage of those 4 guys' career. Chris, just I call it maybe the conductor in a lot of ways, and then damn James Storm, just that yin and yang of the tag, and then Chris Harris just wanting to do the very, very best. All 4 of those guys. Again, I'm going to go and I'd have to go back and say, oh shit, I forgot about that. Forgot about this. But it has to be the absolute best tag match. And I think that takes in an awful lot of ground, because you've got, I think when they were really hitting on all cylinders, Rude, Young, Team Canada, good. Beer Money, James and Bobby were great. The Motor City Machine Guns, match after match after match after match. Young, the young bucks at the time. Just we Jesus. Then you're going to start thinking about, I can hear Bubba right now. What are you talking about? This match and this year? I mean, because those guys knew how to tell great stories. But the culmination, the stipulation, obviously I'm still a huge believer in the 6-sided ring, but the 6 sides of steel and that type of cage, I just think it's at the very top of the list. Certainly the best tag match. It's probably top 3, certainly top 5 matches in TNA history. Just it all came together. And again, here's another thing that I think a lot of people, when you look back on TNA history, you don't remember that going into this show, the decision was made, all right, we're going to put the tag on last. That didn't always happen in TNA history. The 3-way was the first time, the Joe AJ Daniels match. That was the first time that the X Division had main event in the show. So closing a pay-per-view, I do believe, and I think some people take light of this nowadays, there's a reason you're on last. You better, A, be able to follow everybody else, but B, that's the last thing the consumer has in their mouth: their taste, their touch, their see, their vision, but most importantly, how they feel. When you got done watching this match, Conrad, it is, I think, a reason in a lot of ways that there are a certain group of fans that just TNA was their jam, if that makes sense. Later on, TNA LOL, but man, oh man, like I've said many, many times, through 2009, this is one of those matches that the TNA faithful stood their ground on.
I love it. I think this is a match that everybody should go out of their way to see. It's posted on TNA YouTube. We will provide a link for that on social, and I'd love for everybody to go check it out. The other 3-way we're talking about happened September the following year. It was Unbreakable. AJ, Christopher Daniels, and Samoa Joe. Notice the connective tissue between what most people consider the 2 best matches in TNA history. It's Christopher Daniels.
Bingo.
I know that Elix Skipper gets a lot of credit for the walk. I mean, you want to talk about a daredevil thing, I'll never forget it. He deserves all the praise in the world. But I want to remind everybody, Christopher Daniels, Chris Harris, James Storm, they helped make that thing possible. It's not like he's out there wrestling himself. I think it's probably the greatest cage match and the greatest tag match. And I think it's my favorite match in TNA history.
Wow.
And I also think that Mike Tenay and Don West were at their very best on this call. As a reminder, let's remind everybody that the knock on TNA for years and years is that they wouldn't elevate the X division. They just lean on the old guys. Randy Savage was in the match before them. So was Jeff Hardy. So was Jeff Jarrett. So was Kevin Nash. So was Scott Hall. TNA got it right here. They put the cage match on last. There's no tag titles on the line. That opened the show. This is real stakes. It's a blood and guts match with crazy high spots, crazy psychology, and a standing ovation, not just from the crowd, but from the talent. When did you know that Elix was going to do the cage walk, and how nervous were you for him to do that?
And that was not run by me. To the best of my recollection, it was not run by me.
Are you watching on a monitor in the back? What's the response in the back when people see him do that?
Holy shit. Yeah. Yeah. And again, the timing of it all, and I'm not saying, yeah, in a lot of ways I am. Chris Harris's timing, that just the entire high risk maneuver was off the charts. And if when you go back and listen, again, this is something takes me back to the studio. Don West's call of it, and by design, Don was not polished. He wasn't your typical color commentator. He wasn't quick-witted with his jokes, or that wasn't he was. And I said, Don, go be a fan, and you get emotionally involved like a fan would. Man, when you hear that call, I think Don's energy at certain times on certain shows would bring the very best out of Tenay. They brought the best out of both of each other. But if Don, you could just, it's real raw emotion. And like Don would come back from shows, Conrad, I don't know if I ever told you this. He'd wear the shiny shirts and stuff like that. And you would see him in the pre-show and the tie and the nice shirt and all that kind of stuff and welcome and all that. Don would come through the curtain at the end of the night. And when I tell you his shiny blue shirt would be 7 shades darker, drenched in sweat. Once Don got going, he's sweating his ass off and involved, but it was like he was a part of the match or as much or more than anybody. But anyway, kudos to Mike, Don, Rudy, all 4 performers. It was really special.
You know, I know we're going overtime here. I'm sorry that we're running late, but I wanted to spend just a second here to talk about Elix Skipper, because I know we always talk about here on the program, you and I do, about how Monty Brown is one of the ones that got away. But Elix Skipper, man, you want to talk about a guy who was ahead of his time. I want to remind everybody, this guy came through the power plant. Yep. And when you think about him being a power plant trainee and then a part of Team Canada and WCW, and then all the great stuff he does here in TNA, if a guy like that came around in this modern era, man, he'd be wrestling on Wednesday nights. He'd be such a big part of AEW. Would he not?
Oh, but see, and that's where the generational circumstances, you hear about a guy, oh man, he was ahead of his time, or there's certain talent that are out there right now that I'll call it, I don't want to call it the territory days, but the just, you know, it's like the different time frames, the diff era, and just it happens in sports too, that you have a guy that may be a throwback tight end or a throwback running back or whatever it may be. Just happens. If Elix would have been born 10 years later and he would have walked the top of a cage in, we'll call it 2015, 2016, 2017, he may be a world champ today.
I just, I'm in awe of Elix Skipper. I think he's one of the great what ifs, and I'm not trying to not give flowers to Christopher Daniels. I just mentioned he's sort of the common name that you see in all these great TNA matches. And who could forget, you know, what a star that Chris Harris and James Storm were and are. It was just, this to me is peak TNA. And you heard Dave Meltzer say this is one of the best wrestling pay-per-views of all time. And when you really have been reading Dave Meltzer a long time, you know that it almost felt like at times He was paid specifically to shit on TNA. I mean, that's what he did. And so for him to come out and say, this is one of the best wrestling pay-per-views of all time, it really says a lot. Go out of your way to celebrate all that was for Turning Point 2004. We'll have a link on our social and in the description for our show today where you can find this on the TNA YouTube. But go out of your way to watch this Elix Skipper cage match, especially if you've never seen it. I know I keep saying the Elix Skipper cage match, but it's just as iconic to me as Mick Foley's fall. I mean, if that had happened in the WWF, can you imagine how many replays that would have been on? I mean, it would live forever.
The quadruple juice, the story, the step, the package going. I mean, it just was all laid out. We built that too. That's another thing that as far as the step, look, we weren't on primetime television and 2 hours on a top 3 network and all that kind of stuff. But the story that led through this, that's why the people that were there were so emotionally involved. They knew, okay, Daniels, because Triple X started in the Asylum days, and it was a unique kind of bond. But man, oh man, their chemistry as a trios was unique, but really strong.
Check it out, boys and girls. Turning Point 2004. That'll put the button on today's episode. Thank you to our live studio audience who hung out with us today, and we greatly appreciate you guys hanging with us. And we hope that you all have a great Thanksgiving. Jeff, before we get out of here, I got one Thanksgiving question for you, and this is how we'll close the show. I want you to tell me the 5 things that are must-have for you on your Thanksgiving plate. You can only have 5. Your top 5, what are they?
Turkey.
Yep.
Dressing.
Yep.
Cranberry sauce.
I'm not counting cranberry sauce.
Wow. I'm not even a big fan of dressing unless I get my cranberry, but that's so
I'm just saying sauces and gravies don't count.
Okay. So we got turkey, dressing.
Got 3 more.
You got to go sweet potato.
Okay.
With marshmallow and
sweet potato casserole. All right, you got 2 left.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Boy, Miss Karen gets off easy if that's all you got to have at your house is turkey dressing and cranberry.
I've got a list in my brain of 10 things going on right now, but I got to go pecan pie.
Okay, 1 left
for dessert. You know what? This may be anti-Thanksgiving, but I cook it'll melt in your mouth. I cook a beef tenderloin that I knew that was going to throw you off.
2 meats at Thanksgiving?
Oh, hell yeah, buddy. Get your protein, dude.
Well, listen, I mean, I've heard of like turkey and ham, but turkey and beef tenderloin, that's a wrestler. That's some wrestler shit right there.
Okay. Yeah,
are there no casseroles that are on the list besides sweet potato?
Oh, the green bean casserole. Oh gosh.
Do y'all do deviled eggs in Tennessee? Is that allowed?
Do you know the big? They keep me away from them because I'll eat 6 or 8.
And we know what comes after that.
Yeah, way before the meal gets going. I'm a big deviled egg guy. Love them.
Well, we hope you guys have a great turkey day. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Don't forget, tomorrow night, AEW is live from Chicago. Still a handful of tickets remain, AEWTIX.com. And stay tuned on deck. It's Ask Jeff Anything right here on My World.
Peace.